In a world ruled by swords and sorcery, a young man crouches at a desk, quill scratching in his grip, staring at his face like it's begging to be answered. Ragnar Brave, a frontier nobleman, scribbles like his life depends on it, glaring through pure frustration as he mutters why he's stuck wrestling with this damn clunky paperwork. Seabass, an older man in a butler's uniform, stands stone still with a cigarette pinched between his fingers, and when the door creaks open, he solemnly reports that nearly everyone in the estate was wiped out in battle. He presses on, telling Ragnar that even as a lowly retainer, this is his job now that he's the new lord. Ragnar feels the weight crush him. He groans and snaps to Seabass that he arrived at the perfect time, begging him to help. And Ragnar just inherited the brave frontier. This brutal wasteland won't forgive him. Monsters swarm everywhere, and skirmishes with neighboring countries pop off all the time, so everyone else sneers and calls it the dumping ground. Ragnar stewed over his family's roots. His father and older brothers were all weapons and war types, so he couldn't wrap his head around how anyone from that lot could ever handle something as dry as paperwork. His training wasn't just tough, it was brutal. As the third son, he was drilled from day one to slaughter monsters and enemy soldiers, and they even threw him against an orc when he was only 3 years old. But that life got brutally cut short. Just a few months ago, the rest of his family died on the battlefield, and all that was left were torn banners and swords rammed into the dirt. The last survivor, then boom, the entire frontier territory landed on his shoulders as an inheritance he couldn't refuse. It all becomes too much. He hurls his papers into the air and screams his frustration. He's only the third son who dreamed of roaming as an adventurer, not getting crushed inside a dungeon made of paperwork. He squeezes his eyes shut, drowning in overwhelm, but his butler's voice slashes through his mind, telling him he can't walk away because there's another duty waiting for him to fulfill. The butler starts laying it out. The territory teeters on the edge, yet it's overflowing with natural resources and monster-grade materials, so the adventurer business is booming like crazy. And that prosperity is fragile as glass. Push the fields and enemy soldiers swoop in to pillage. Push the mountains and monsters crawl out to raid, so their self-sufficiency ends up painfully limited. So yeah, since everything hinges on this, Ragnar the heir has to march into the academy in the royal capital. And there, he'll have to charm those smug noble brats just to earn their backing, while he wrestles with the humiliation, asking himself, can he really pull this off? He rakes a hand through his hair, annoyed, and asks if he can just refuse to enroll, saying his family already churns out talented fighters. Then Seabass shuts him down instantly, firm as steel. Absolutely not. Frustration surged in Ragnar's chest as he snapped, demanding to know what Seabass wants now. The butler rose with stiff formality and said he had something urgent to discuss. A muscle in the butler's cheek twitches as he snaps out Ragnar's full title, Young Master Ragnar, to get his attention. The news hits like a hammer. Ragnar gets a marriage proposal. The young lord's eyes pop open in pure shock because the moment he hears it, a veiled bride flashes in his mind like a sudden nightmare. He recoils, blurting that this proposal is way too sudden, and Seabass just smiles, saying these offers aren't rare once you've become the lord of a territory. The butler reminded Ragnar that his brothers had fiancées too, yet those women despised the brutal region and refused to stay, and that truth clearly gnawed at him. He fumes as the truth hits. Those past fiancées never even showed up for the funeral. Seabass backs him up, saying that the moment he broke the news of his brothers' deaths, the women looked almost relieved. Rage rips through him and the quill cracks in his hand, so he whips his gaze to the butler, demanding whether he understands the implication, and a cold thought crawls in. Should I just go kill them? Seabass, pure professionalism, calmly talks his young master out of that. The young master's mood swings like a storm. 1 second he's slumped over his desk, drowning in despair, and the next he's springing up and roaring with joy. Then he declares that he's moving into a dorm in the royal capital and only heading back to handle the territory during the long vacations. He lays out his reasoning. I'm so swamped I'll probably be dead soon anyway. Then he begs Seabass to turn down the marriage proposal for him, only for his butlers to shove a spare pen into his hands and declare, coldly, that refusing it just isn't possible. Seabass lays out the whole mess. This crazy proposal comes from the Duchy of Oldwood, the same house that floods their territory with weapons and food like nobody else. Ragnar's jaw drops and the spare pin snaps in his hand. He panics for a way out, hounding Seabass to remind him of their family's title. Seabass says he's an earl, but Ragnar snaps back that marrying into a duke's family just isn't happening with some dusty frontier earl. The name Old Wood hits his mind like a thunderclap, then his eyes widen and the realization lands hard. He's been here before in this very world. A memory hits him like a punch way back, an orc slammed into him. Now it clicks, that scarred moment is why his memories came roaring back. So why the hell did he forget that critical truth until right now? Horror creeps in as every piece clicks. He's a reincarnator, and this whole world is a game he used to play. He gets hit with a flash of his past life, seeing himself sprawled in bed, locked onto a handheld gaming device, smiling at the culture of Japan, but the name from that life slips just out of reach, like it's teasing him. He felt the full weight of his new reality crash down on him, and then it hit. This was the world of the game he used to play. It's a straight-up O-tone game. Some everyday nobody signs up at a fancy aristocrat school, then, just like clockwork, catches feelings with one of the handsome capture targets. He remembered, though, that behind the love story promise, the game was packed with battles. By the time the story ended, the royal capital was basically a slaughter zone, and he couldn't help but laugh grimly at how true it was. But the real nightmare was this one character who kept popping up on his old handheld console screen, again and again. Alicia, Oldwood's heiress and the story's Villainess, was raised to be queen, dressed in perfection from day one. She was the prince's fiancée, graceful and gifted, and from his past self's bitter memories, she always showed up to get in his way. For all her gifts, her personality was poison, her face twisted in disgust as she spat insults, looking down on anyone she dared label as a commoner. Alicia's elitism was a daily nightmare for the protagonist, trapped in that crowd with her entourage. She'd stalk the girl, barking orders and pushing her to know her place in the social ladder. Even with the non-stop harassment raining down on him, the protagonist only dug in deeper, drawing even closer to the prince, until their burning rivalry finally ignited into a duel where the prince's future hung by a thread. He went stone-cold focused, replaying every moment that came after the duel, because the outcome wasn't just a loss, it was a crushing, devastating defeat. So when the dust settled, her engagement to the prince got yanked away on the spot. Because of what she did and the price she paid, Alicia got hit with the full weight of responsibility. She was married off to a frontier noble house, banished from the high society she once ruled. Ragnar remembered her destination like it was burned into his brain, a lonely little house on a hill, and then a sick, horrifying thought slammed into him. Then it hit him like a freight train. This wasn't some random noble's frontier estate, it was his family's home. The very next morning, warm sunlight poured through his window, and with it came the start of a terrifying new reality. He crumpled forward and dropped onto his bed, drowning in pure, hopeless despair. He buried his face in his hands, convinced this was the absolute worst case, and the thought of having to live with a woman like that made his blood run cold. His mind painted a future where her scornful laughter rained down on him, day after day as she tore him apart, like a living hell. While Ragnar sank into pure misery, Seabass stormed into the room and announced that the young master's fiancée was about to arrive, like the final nail in the coffin. It was over. And to make it worse, Ragnar was going to have to drag himself to the academy with her. Now in a sharp suit, he marched up to the butler and grilled him. Why question Seabass? Why bring Alicia into their house at all, when she was a noble meant only for the crown prince? Seabass didn't mince words. They were dumping her there and using her as a warning and example for everyone else. The butler, still weirdly cheerful, told Ragnant the brave territory claims a ton of lives, and those words left Ragnant completely stunned. Seabass said to keep the brave house standing, every survivor of the war is doing everything they can, and the household crew, maids, a chef, and a guard, looked less like servants and more like battle-hardened veterans who'd seen too much. Seabass walks right beside Ragnar through the long wood-paneled hallway, pressing that point hard. The young master has to step up and own his responsibilities too, but Ragnar just shrugs him off with a lazy, yeah, I get it. Their conversation snaps shut the moment they step outside the manor, and right there, two white horses pull a carriage straight toward the main gate, announcing that their new lease has finally arrived. He stands beside Seabass, a bead of sweat trembling on his temple, jaw tight as he watches the carriage roar closer. The carriage jerked to a stop, and in a shadowy dark dress, the attendant bowed low and told her passenger, "My lady, we've arrived." Then one elegant shoe stepped down onto the ground. Out of the carriage steps Alicia Oldwood, eyes like knives, posture carved in stone, and a brutal burn scar stretches across the whole left side of her face from her forehead to her cheek. As Seabass strides up to greet her properly, he introduces himself and treats the moment like an honor to receive her, while Ragna just freezes, staring in utter shock at how she looks. Then the butler spots his master's obvious disbelief, cracks him across the back of the head with a sharp thwack, and barks, "Young master." While the chaos rages around her, Alicia's face stays stone calm. She locks eyes with Ragna and in a dead, steady voice says his reaction to her is exactly what she expected. He stammers, scrambling to patch up his gaffe, then starts to ask how she got the burn right as he snaps himself back and insists it's totally fine if she doesn't want to talk about it. Then his whole vibe flips. He breaks into a warm, real smile, reassures her, and tells her that kind of injury is pretty much routine in a brave territory. His words hit her like a sudden punch, and her eyes flew wide with total, jaw-dropping shock. She fires back, stunned that he calls her scar normal, and when she can't wrap her head around it, he just beams and plainly goes, "Yeah." He lays out his viewpoint and tells you this. Out in his territory, soldiers and adventurers come home soaked in wounds, and he calmly puts two and two together. That burn has to be from a duel. Her eyes drop as his words sink in, and she can't deny it. Yeah, that scar is huge. The sting of her peers' cruelty crashes back, those whispers behind her back saying her pretty face had been ruined, that this was the perfect fate for someone living in disgrace, and that anyone who laid eyes on it would recoil at once. And then the focus snaps to her situation. Why in the world is a duke's daughter out there alone, without even a maid? Right then, Seabass blurts that Lady Alicia's attendant is finally taking her leave, and it hits her like a punch to the chest. A brutal silence crashes down between them as the single carriage that hauled her attendant rolls off, vanishing down the road until it's swallowed by the horizon. Seabass stares at the truth of her arrival and doesn't blink. A tiny carriage, just one suitcase, and not a single servant in sight, like the world already wrote her desperation in advance. Ragnar stares at her face, and the look he finds there makes his stomach drop, pure resignation, like he's staring at a defeated enemy soldier who's already surrendered. As Seabass motions Lady Alicia to trail after him, Ragnar watches them fade into the distance. Then a sudden thought hits him like lightning. This is nothing like what he expected. It braced itself for arrogance and rule-breaking pride. Then her condescending, mocking laugh snapped back into his mind, and it hit him like a punch. The quiet, beaten-down woman sitting there right in front of him was nothing like that memory. He thrusts a hand forward, inviting Alicia to follow him to her room, and she answers with a soft, nervous hesitation. Just as she starts to follow, he shoots his hand out and softly taps her shoulder, then tells her to hold up for a second. In the blink of an eye, his hand clamps down with a brutal crunch, and his face hardens into pure seriousness as he stands beside emotionless Alicia. His eyes narrowed to slits, and his focus snapped right onto the mark he just hit. She broke the tense silence. Alicia asked if there was dust on her, and Ragnar snapped back fast, saying his own clothes were worse. Then she apologized and admitted hers were just old, her face flickering with confusion and tiredness all at once. He stares at her, jaw tight, fist clenched hard, like the weight of what's happening finally slams into his mind. He cracks his palm open, and there it is, shredded demon bug remains. These things are curses ripped straight from grudges, and if even one has set its sight on you, a peaceful life stops being possible. He stares at Alicia and blurts out that she must have racked up a mountain of enemies while his gut spirals. He realizes there were roughly 100 demon bugs latched onto her, and the number of those creepy things matches the exact amount of hate coming for her. The terrifying thought hits him. Any normal person stuffed with this many bugs would snap into madness instantly. But Alicia stays ice calm, like nothing in the world could shake her. That crushing contradiction slams him into reevaluating his whole world, so he shifts his thinking and remembers Alicia, a refined, educated future queen. Then the real question hits: why would someone like her suddenly launch a duel at a commoner? The official story falls apart, piece by piece. He stared at the way this whole world was built and suddenly saw it like a giant game board, and that's when it hit him. Villains aren't optional here, they're what make the story move, so he started to suspect Alicia's entire existence had been twisted just to play that role. When he stared at Alicia, dread sank in as he admitted he already knew how her story ended, and that same bitter curse hit them both, two souls trapped like puppets, yanked around by fate's cold hands. He replayed that brutal game ending in his head. Once her engagement shattered, Alicia swallowed her rage, sealed a deal with the devil, and turned into a monster, then wiped out the entire brave territory in a full-on rampage. Horror hit him in waves when he realized this wasn't a random outcome at all. It was inevitable, and the sickest part, he didn't even show up in the game, which meant Alicia would come for him for sure. The truth made his stomach drop. This future's weight crushed him, and he crossed his arms before raking a hand through his hair in panic. Because if that path kept going, his territory was finished. He felt completely cornered, knowing he and Alicia were being puppeted by destiny, and he desperately clawed for any way out. Then a fierce plan snapped into place in his mind. He wasn't letting this happen, not to Alicia. He would step in himself, push her off the wrong road, and fight to bring her life back. Alicia must have felt the change in him because she spoke with a soft, resigned calm like she'd already made peace with it. If their doom was locked in no matter what, then they should meet it with hope in their eyes. He caught her drift and warned her. If anything bad ever struck while they were together, a dark, beetle-like demon bug would suddenly skitter across the path right at Alicia's feet. He'd just smash whatever was behind it, then, like a closing door, his foot slammed down with ruthless speed, squashing the demon bug into nothing. Alicia froze at his declaration, then snapped her gaze up at him, determination flashing in her eyes as she finally found her voice, stammering that she wanted to fight back too, against the world that had already condemned them. He locked eyes with her and flashed a gentle, reassuring smile, telling her to breathe easy, because underneath that warmth, his determination stayed ironclad and unshakable. He throws his arms behind his head and feels the fire of purpose snap back into him, then flashes a confident grin and vows he'll give it everything, while Alicia walks right beside him, clocking that huge shift in his attitude. His carefree grin catches her completely off guard, and the moment it lands, she can't help but think, this is new, and it feels unfamiliar to be seen like this. That moment sticks in her head, and a flicker of doubt crosses her face. She's trying to remember when she ever felt something this real and this simple before. She steps forward, but the question still won't let go, like a puzzle from her past she can't quite name. She watches him stride through the gates ahead of her, and one thought locks into place. What a strange guy, someone she never saw coming. And deep in the villain's heart, something brand new starts to quietly take root. Alicia Oldwood stayed locked in her room, eating every meal that got delivered to her, but she didn't snap, didn't throw shade, she just shut down completely and hid in silence. Ragnar snapped back with zero hesitation. He slammed his fist into the wall, rage simmering as that demon bug buzzed and wouldn't leave him alone. He cooked up an excuse for his irritation with the Seabass, claiming he was busy stomping out those pesky pests, then bragged about how many there were and demanded his butler help him. While the young master thought about tracking the bugs to their source, he snapped back when he realized that starting that much of a commotion would end up tearing the whole house apart. Fighting wasn't going to save anyone. He had to do something about Lady Alicia's heart, because it was pulling in those demon bugs like a magnet, and he felt completely helpless, like the brave family only knew one move: fight. His whole life had been nothing but training and monster extermination, and Alicia was the first girl his age he'd ever truly met. Sensing Ragnar's turmoil, Seabass stepped in with a calm little promise. Everything would be fine, and it made Ragnar blurt out, half baffled, what a normal youth is even supposed to look like. An idea hit him out of nowhere, and the memories of academy social nights lit a spark. So he decided to copy a tea party and earn a real connection by inviting Alicia to breakfast, then marched up to her door, knocked hard, and announced, "Breakfast is ready." Ragnar rammed through the door like a storm, yelling for her to wake up and eat with him, only for Alicia, already dressed, to step out and say calmly, "I'm awake and you're about to break the door." He froze, admitting his fear that she might pull something drastic, and then, moments later, they sat down at the breakfast table with thick, awkward tension hanging in the air. With a towel cinched on his head, Ragnar started hammering the cracked doorframe back into place, and Alicia just stared, flustered by how rough he was and picturing what would have happened if that door had truly snapped. "Don't worry," he said, grinning like this was his specialty, then practically pushed her toward her breakfast and coffee. Buoyed by his idea, she swallowed her nerves, lifted the teak to her lips, and took a cautious little sip. That first sip hit like a punch. She sputtered, shouting that it was way too bitter. Ragnar jerked back, startled, and demanded what happened, wiping her mouth as she apologized. Alicia explained it was her very first time drinking coffee because at home she always drank tea. Ragnar just stood there, eyes wide, completely stunned by the truth. He awkwardly tells him he can't spare sugar for the coffee because it's insanely expensive in their world, and Alicia quickly reassures him it's totally okay. After he warns her not to drink it right before bed, she takes a sip, and that sweetness hits her like, wait, where did this come from? Then they dive into their meal, and Ragnar's crunching fills the room nonstop. Her curiosity hit a peak. Alicia blurted, "What are you eating?" He stayed cool and said, "Monster meat," then explained that the brave family's men are raised on it. Alicia recoiled in terror, demanding, "So it's poisonous?" He explains that if you start eating it young, your body builds a tolerance, and sure, the taste is awful at first, but in wartime it turns into a priceless lifeline, and just as he's done, Alicia quietly calls his name. She demanded to know why he kept taking those jobs on himself, and with a grim look on his face, he confessed that they're running on fumes. Most of their servants have died in battle lately. Alicia listened in stunned silence, and understanding finally settled into her expression. He keeps going, and now he lays bare the real heart of his people's belief. What they honor most isn't just winning, it's surviving with grit and getting back up no matter what. As he says those words, he thrusts his hand forward and lets his fingers softly brush the scar on her cheek. He tells her that where he comes from, nobody hides their scars, they wear them like badges of honor. Then he locks eyes with her, voice full of sincerity, calling her truly remarkable and admitting straight up that he carries scars too. Caught in the act of getting too close, he jerks back, cheeks blazing, blurting that it's a habit he picked up from inspecting soldiers' wounds. And then he slams into a new topic, admitting he came to ask her out. He tells her that when you stand in the face of all that wild, endless land, every human fight feels tiny, and Alicia, still flushed from that earlier moment, murmurs that yeah, they do. She stares at her, hanging on every word until the silence stretches. Then Alicia finally nods and accepts his proposal. She asks him formally but warmly to show her around his land, and he lights up with a huge smile, thrilled she said yes. Next thing they know, they're heading straight for the distant mountains. Turns out the trip is way harsher than he ever expected, so he hauls her along by the hand through the wild, untamed wilderness, picking a path through jagged rocks and choking overgrowth. Alicia's struggling the whole way, cursing her choice under her breath, snapping that sure, she agreed to come, but she had no clue this tour would drag them so deep into the mountains. He points out where they are, the Udina mountain range, a huge, jagged formation guarding the edge of the brave territory, where rare plants and valuable minerals thrive, the kind you can't get anywhere near the royal capital. She blurts out how shocked she is because she figured they were coming to a town to hunt down local specialty goods. Then he just gives that calm smile and tells her the truth. Nothing like that exists here, something she probably clocked the moment she first crossed into the territory. He lays out the brutal truth of frontier life, says the only real fun is gambling, and then recounts a sick tale of someone betting on his own father's death in battle, grimly adding that Seabass handled it. She lets that dark story sink in, eyes clouding with worry, then, after a beat, she waves it off like it's nothing, insisting it's fine because if this is normal here, she'll just have to live with it, same way she swallowed that monster meat coffee. He watches her in silence, clocking every hard effort she's throwing at this brutal new world, and when he spots her wearing down, he tells her to take a breather by a small, clear spring. She scoops the water into her hands and drinks, then her eyes snap wide with shock at just how insanely delicious it tastes. He lays out the truth. These mountains climb so high and sweat so little that the water stays insanely pure, crystal clear in a way she'll never get back in the capital. And even if the land bites hard, knowing what makes it special might be the one thing that makes surviving it feel possible. His words hit her like thunder while she scoops up more water, and she can't stop thinking about what learning really means. He keeps going, laying out the brave family's rule. Survival runs on knowledge. You've got to understand your enemies and your allies because we all live on the same earth and you never ever underestimate them. Then he tosses in that he's heard a proverb just like this from a faraway world. Alicia nods softly, letting him know she got it. It ends by laying out the frontier's core philosophy. Out here, people call the shots, trusting their own minds and the world they've figured out, and for that personal truth, they'll fight to the last breath. Then the sun climbs over a band of frontiersmen, staring into the huge, brutal land they swear is home. He leans in and tells Alicia he's seen the faces of the people in his territory, and it's nothing like the nasty rumors she might have heard. He keeps going, sure, you can laugh at the rumors, but the people of the brave territory don't laugh at all. After deep thought, they choose silence because this is a place where people bet their lives on life-or-death entertainment, and even the way they react to gossip matters. With that thought still hanging there, he bursts forward over the rocks, shouting for her to shake it off, because their destination is right ahead, and Alicia blurts, startled, that he has to wait. He whips around to her with a weird grin, and she's like, "Wait, what?" Then she calls out the contradiction. He told her not to laugh, and now he's telling her to laugh. He just takes her hand in reply, and that unexpected move hits her like a jolt, making her realize how truly strange he is. She tries to think, but it dies in her throat as she looks up, eyes going wide, shaking with pure astonishment at what she's just uncovered. Before them, a jaw-dropping panorama crashes in an enormous, sun-blasted valley carved wide by countless terraced fields. a living monument to generations of humans wrestling the wild and winning. Standing right beside her, Ragnar watches her reaction with a soft, gentle grin, and Alicia, still reeling from that breathtaking view, can barely squeeze out one breathy word of pure awe. After they soak in the view, he throws down a blanket, digs out a light snack, and goes, "You're probably starving after that walk." While he's at it, he looks her way and asks if he can ask Lord Ragnar a question. He tells her it's totally fine to call him by name, no fancy titles, no formality, because he's just not used to them. She gets flustered and tries to argue, but he waves it off like it's nothing. Then, after a quick pause, she finally whispers it out, "Ragna." He presses Alicia with a brutal question. After you've agonized, chosen your path, and still get hit with an unavoidable ending you can't escape, so what do you do then? And he can't help blurting it out like a curse. Is there a real fix, or is it just one of those "time will handle it" answers that sounds good but changes nothing? He keeps going, saying once you pick a side, the other one crumbles, like that old battlefield flashes in his head, bodies scattered, and he insists there's no undoing what's already gone. Then he leans in and asks her straight up, what if there's nothing left? Alicia speaks softly, but every word hits hard. If she loses that one thing, she loses everything. Then she looks back on her past and admits the truth. Her whole life has been built for one single purpose. Her calm shatters the moment the truth crushes her. She gasps out, "I'm a duchess," and the pain spills over as she admits it. She's already dead, and that's exactly why she dragged herself to this godforsaken land. She snaps back to the moment and blurts out a quick apology, blaming it on demon bugs. While Ragnar studies her like he can see the real mission. She's trying to cut loose these brutal feelings, but can you actually do that? When she tries to brush off her pain, his hand snaps into a tight fist, and with sudden heavy urgency he blurts her name, Alicia. She locks eyes with her and swears, voice steady and solemn, "I'll protect you from this day on, always." And Alicia freezes, utterly stunned, staring wide-eyed like she can't even breathe. He breaks into a grin and says he can tell she's not used to someone talking to her so casually. Then he makes good on his promise. Even if Alicia's duchy vanishes, she's still Alicia of a brave family, and he'll guard her no matter what. And with a hint of awkward embarrassment, he admits he even rehearsed that exact line. He breaks down his image training, how he kept picturing himself up there, declaring his piece to those fancy nobles from the capital. While Alicia can't help but roll her eyes, thinking all that practice was a total waste and that the whole idea of him rehearsing something like that is downright ridiculous. A warm blush spreads across her cheeks and she spins toward him to admit she's been overthinking, yet she doesn't hate his vow at all. It feels clear, simple, and easy to get. Ragnar freezes, completely stunned by her honest, upbeat response. She stared at their locked pinkies, the promise glowing in that tiny touch, and she pressed him hard, making sure he'd still protect her, even when going back to the academy with him meant getting hit with all that hate and hostility. He answered instantly, and a bold, confident grin lit up his face. Yeah, of course, he could handle this, and she should just trust him. Once the promise was sealed, he snapped his head toward the unseen and shouted, "Onyx, did you see that?" When the call hit, a colossal shadow swallowed the sky, then a massive, horned black dragon crashed down, towering over everything as if the land couldn't stand a chance, and with a thunderdeep voice, it confirmed it had truly seen Ragnar Bray's vow. Ragnar just smiled and told Alicia that the black dragon Onyx was his friend and he wanted to make sure she saw the vow for herself. But that bombshell hit too hard and Alicia collapsed into a faint right then and there. Ragna snapped out her name in panic because the dragon had clocked her weakness for real. Their first date, packed with non-stop trouble, truly ended with a bang. Alicia Oldwood calls out to Ragnar Brave, gushing that they've somehow got even closer since their first date. Then she grills him about why the room looked like chaos and what happened to the dragon from yesterday. Ragnar snaps to it, saying she means Onyx, and lays out his reasoning. He thought it would be romantic to make a vow right in front of the dragon. He goes on, spelling it out. Onyx is a dragon deep in those mountain depths, and its blessing wiped the demon bugs clean off the map. He's clearly satisfied by all of it, while Alicia's left stunned, staring at him like, "How are you staying this calm?" Seba steps in to set the scene, telling the young master that he'd already taken Lord Onyx head-on in a one-on-one duel, and it ended in a draw, which is why the great dragon finally acknowledged him. Ragna swallows hard and admits he was seconds away from dying. She starts getting flustered, swearing she must have looked like a total idiot for panicking. Then Ragna steps in fast, telling her it's okay, because they still managed to talk things out with the creature in the end. As Alicia slaved over paperwork, a bearded staffer leaned in and told her, "The first time you get here, everything shocks you, everyone always does." Then he grinned and promised, "Give it time, nothing will surprise you anymore." The scene slams into a room drowning in stacks of papers and heavy ledgers, and Ragna points at the chaos like, "Yeah, that's the problem right now." Alicia watches with a small, flustered blush while the rest of the staff grind away in the background. Even with everything he knows about modern society, stacking this much information is going to chew up a ton of time. Then Alicia steps in, locks eyes with him, and just says, "Lend it to me," reaching out with zero hesitation. He blinks at her sudden initiative because he's been grinding for ages, slow progress, weird cash flows, and even those purchasing period shifts. And now that he's finally verified the current numbers, he snaps to Seabass and demands the past documents right away. After a while, Ragnas finally exhales like a weight's been lifted, thinking the work is almost done. Then the spotlight snaps to Alicia, standing there with pure, razor-sharp confidence as she lifts up a stack of perfectly sorted, finished papers. Work astounds the staff and they gush praise for her like there's no tomorrow. Seabass even says, "Of course she's a talented woman." While everyone's watching, Ragnar props his chin on his hand and wonders if these modern days are really that short on basic education. Then he catches himself with a calm, knowing look. He stared at her and a thought hit him hard. When those demon bugs weren't latched on, Alicia could grin like any normal girl. Right when it felt like he was being watched, she whipped around and looked him dead in the eye, then boldly said she was going to help clean the mansion. The moment her staff heard it, they gasped in panic and insisted Lady Alicia absolutely couldn't be doing that. She spoke up calmly, admitting that for now she was the brave family's servant, and a human who just wanted to finally taste every life she'd been denied before. While the maid stammered, Seabass praised her as a good kid and urged Ragnar and the others to give it their all too. Later, Seabass told Ragnar he left some work for him, then vowed to toughen his own heart for what came next, but Ragnar didn't even look up. He stared at the crazy high price on that brand new weapon shop and snapped straight at Seabass, asking if he was some kind of demon for even pitching it. My mind sprinted, snapping the clues together. This weapon shop had opened on the very day Lady Alicia arrived, and the owners just happened to be folks from the royal capital. He replayed everything he'd learned about their business moves. These guys ran like the capital crowd, selling basic stuff like it was priceless treasure, but out on the frontier that plan was doomed to crash. Now the real goal finally surfaced. Seabass was sure these people were posted to keep eyes on Alicia, and with everything exposed, he turned to the young master and demanded to know what he planned to do next. When the moment hit, Ragnar didn't hesitate. Night swallowed the town as he slipped out of the mansion and prowled through the shadowed streets without a sound. He met up with Seabass right near their destination, and the butler snapped them to slow down because trained pros were inside. Ragnar pressed him on how he could be so sure, and Seabass admitted he'd only heard it firsthand from an adventurer who'd been nearby. It came straight from the horse's mouth. Seabass had heard the adventurer admit he'd hit his breaking point with the shop's arrogant ways, then decided to slip in and steal something valuable. He replayed the adventurer's words in his head because the moment he blinked, the man's right arm was already gone like it never stood a chance. The sword didn't even look like it moved. And Ragnar finally knew, cold and certain. The shop staff had chopped the arm off without drawing a single blade. His mind snapped back to the people inside, and one of them was a magician. This world was drenched in magic essence, and anyone who could wield it was called a sorcerer. He knew the worst suffering in the war came from those who had to face enemy magicians. Now it all clicked. Their target was Alicia, and they came to erase her. With his mind set, he smashed the door wide open with a thunderous boom, and inside everyone jolted. Who was this guy? They stared, then realized it was Ragnar Brave and demanded to know why he was there. Ragnar stayed cool and flat out said they were the ones who started it. He kept pressing his point, saying they were skulking around his turf. Then he laid down a simple deal. Tell him why you're here and he won't go too hard on you. Without a word, they yanked out their swords, faces twisted with menace as they closed in around him. Ragnar's eyes snapped sharp. His worst suspicions were confirmed. They were ready to draw steel right in front of the local lord. One of the guards, a bald man, snorted that he didn't remember touching a single soul, and the other guard smirked that if they just shut Ragnar up right now, they'd have no trouble at all since nobody would catch them with weapons. Their intentions were crystal clear. 3 men slammed into him at once, snarling that the naive third son came alone, and steel came flying from every direction, aimed right for his head. Ragnar and the others slammed in together, and the enemy got crushed by sheer force. Ragnar shot forward like a blur, wrecked one attacker with a brutal fist, and sent him soaring backward as one chilling thought hit him. weak. In the blink of an eye, it was done. Every attacker sprawled on the floor, groaning in agony, while Ragnar stood there, cool as ever, surveying the wreckage. His eyes snapped to a figure hunched in the shadows, hood up, long pale hair spilling out, clapping softly with a grin. They praised his insane strength, calling out how impressive it was for a mere 15-year-old. Ragnar spun toward them and shot back, "My lord." The hooded man grinned, clocked his opponent as the magician, and then leaned in to ask, "Can I steal just one question?" Ragnar brushed it off, his face hardening as he barreled in with a desperate question. "How's Miss Alicia holding up?" The hooded man burst in with a wild, manic cackle, delighting at the thought of prodigy Alicia being swallowed by his gift, while a monstrous praying mantis demon coiled into existence behind him. His power roared through the air for miles, and even Alicia recoiled, because she instantly recognized that familiar, evil presence. When Ragnar saw the truth that this man was the wicked tormentor, rage exploded in his chest. He charged forward, grabbed the man's robes, and screamed that he knew he was the one unleashing swarms of demon bugs after her. The giant mantis slammed forward to guard its master, claw down, impact loud, but Ragnar was already one step ahead, using the creature's own arms like a stepping stone to drive straight into the counterattack. He gets slammed to the ground, the hooded man gapes upward, thoughts spinning out of control. He can't believe Lady Alicia is living freely, smiling like nothing happened. Ragnar roared that nothing would stop him, then revealed he'd been whispering his feelings to her every single day just to choke the curse that pushed her to hate everyone. He lunged for the mantis, but his blade skidded off its hide, leaving the hooded man staring in total confusion. Even with the creature's hard defense, the hooded man still yelped in agony when Ragnar's attack smashed into him. Ragnar's eyes stayed ice cold as he swore he'd wipe out the pest the man had been feeding. He stood over the battered man, surrounded by wreckage, and snarled a deal. "Spill who's really behind all this, and I'll let you breathe." He swings his sword down hard on the hooded man and declares it's retribution for every bit of trouble he's caused Alicia. Pinned to the earth, the defeated man only manages a choking hiss. He vows to curse Ragnar again and again, like the threat is stuck in his throat. He doesn't even flinch at the threat, he just turns away with a smug smirk and lets it slip that he's already cursed. Right as Seabass closes in to ask if it's over, Ragnar stays cool and tells his butler to take care of the cleanup, and Seabass instantly nods along. Later, beneath the glittering stars, he pulls Seabass aside and blurts out his question. Can he find a way to keep Alicia right by his side once they both head to the academy? The butler totally misreads the question, his mind sprinting straight to a scandal, living together, plus the whole pregnancy bomb while they're still students, until Ragnar's face burns red and he blurts out, fast and mortified, that he meant none of it. Night presses in, smothering the quiet estate in total darkness. Ragnar strides alone through the darkened streets, replaying everything he's done lately, wondering if this is the biggest move he's made since he avenged his father, and even when his heart started to beat for something beyond what he used to know. Then his mind jumps to what's next, brimming with doubt about whether he'll ever truly fit in once the academy doors open. Right then, Alicia hunkers down at her desk with pure determination, readying herself for their time at the academy, and she's decided she will make sure she tells Ragnar everything. With that same fire burning in both their hearts, the night sinks even deeper around them. A few months later, Alicia Oldwood is spotted out in the garden, fingers digging into the soil, blushing as she says they're leaving for the royal capital tomorrow, and she's gutted she won't harvest the daikon radishes in time. From a distance, Ragnar Brave and the household staff stare, watching the supposed villain toil with her own hands. The money meant to chase her education was yanked away and dumped into household chores, and now she's turned into a real powerhouse, scrubbing, cooking, and serving Ragnar with a soft, gentle smile. Dawn cracks over the estate fields, and one maid screams a wicked name at the top of her lungs, shaking with urgency. The whole household freezes at the moment Ragnar and Alicia are about to leave. Every staff member crowds in to watch, while the maid sobs and clings to Alicia's leg, begging her not to go. The rest tell Alicia she could stay safely in the mansion, which only makes the contrast with the young master hit harder. Then the maid swallows her tears, promises she'll send the vegetables to the academy once they're ready, and insists Alicia eats them there, just like everyone else. As the chaos settles, the dark-haired maid steps in and hands the other a chunky leather collar, then tells her, "This is what our young master wore when he was little, so if he ever goes off the rails again, this is what you use to set him straight." Ragnar gets flooded with shouted encouragement and worried reminders. Stay warm, don't skip your veggies, and keep Alicia protected or you're in deep trouble, while the staff frantically wave as the carriage finally rolls away from the estate. Inside the carriage, Alicia beams at Ragnar, gushing about how everyone showers him with love, and then she admits she's a little jealous. Ragnar drops his gaze, barely speaking as he realizes this is the very first time he's ever left his territory. His mind keeps slipping back to the people he's leaving, cherished smiles from the staff and the craftsmen who built it all. Then, with one last hard, final resolve, he lets the carriage roll on, and the world outside flips into a roaring, endless sea. After a while, Seabass shouts that the royal capital is finally in sight. When Ragnar turns, Alicia freezes with a huge blush and blurts that what she's about to ask is embarrassing, but she's got a favor she needs Ragnar to grant. She asks him eyes wide if he'll teach her how to buy a ticket and catch the train once they hit the station, and Ragnar freezes, completely stunned into silence. Alicia just giggles, warns him not to laugh, then adds that since it's his first time out too, he might as well let her handle it. She peered into the roaring streets of the royal capital, clocking exactly how packed it was, and with a mischievous grin, she teased that they should slap a collar on Ragnar so he wouldn't get lost. Ragnar froze, totally thrown off, thinking, what kind of weird game is this supposed to be? Then he just stared at the royal capital, Etha, so huge it swallowed the horizon. Over 1 million people packed inside a city wrapped in a barrier said to come from an ancient sage. He couldn't help but think, compared to the huge, barely populated Brave territory, this place felt insanely cramped. And with hardly any monsters and no wars on the horizon, it hit him why everyone crowds in here. As they pushed deeper into the city, Ragnar leaned in and asked if their dorm was actually inside the school grounds. Alicia lit up and said yes, boys and girls even had their own separate dorms, and she sounded way too excited about it. Then they finally boarded a train and watched the city streets fall away behind them. The destination hit like a punch. There they stood in front of a crumbling, rundown building that was supposed to be their new home. Ragnar recoiled at the wreck of it, and even worse, the terrifying thought that boys and girls would have to live together. While all that sank in, Alicia spotted a letter meant for Ragnar, sent by Seabass. And when Ragnar started tracking it out on a map, he couldn't believe how far this place was from school. She read the letter and instantly saw Seabass's scheme, pushing her into a trashy dorm and forcing public humiliation just to make the nobles who hated her return believe she'd changed, all to control the story of her reputation. As he glanced over his shoulder, he spotted a silver lining. If no one else was around, it would be a cinch, even if he knew it still needed a proper scrub. And honestly, he even daydreamed about growing vegetables in the courtyard. His practical thoughts got instantly wrecked as he kept reading, and when he hit the part about condoms being in his room, he slammed the letter into his fist like it burned. Seabass' real goal finally clicked. This wasn't about anything else. It was all about forcing them to live together. The note ended with one cold command. Ragnar had to pass the exam if he wanted to join the same upper class as Lady Alicia. Good luck. He weighed the sheer weight of this task, because Aethernam Academy had swept up nearly every noble child in the country and split them by rank. The upper class was reserved for kids who could win a royal marriage, while everyone else got shoved into the lower class. But here's the twist. If a commoner's magic or knowledge blew everyone away, they could be declared descendants of sages and get into the academy without having to jump through the usual noble hoops. He could feel it. Everything about their position was shaky because they were just nobles from some far-off land and she'd been labeled a villain. Still, no matter how stacked the odds were, his resolve was locked in. He tells Alicia, if the academy entrance is a battle of skill, I'll make sure we win, and that promise hangs like a thundercloud, until he finally storms into the Grand Academy building and gets snapped at on the spot for being late. Driven by pure stubborn grit, he storms onto the academy grounds and squares up with a huge, intimidating teacher. Ragnar, now dressed in sportswear, throws out an apology for getting lost, but the man's annoyed clicks of his tongue hit like a slap, sneering that a noble from some backwater actually thinks he can make him wait. Then the teacher dismisses him as a slowpoke and shoves him to the first task, a basic magic test where he's told to blast his absolute maximum output straight into the target. The examiner throws his arms across his chest like he's been dragged here for nothing, sighs good grief, and can't stop wondering why he got stuck with this, while Ragnar snaps into a ready stance, itching to follow the next instruction. The examiner keeps grumbling, but he shuts it out, eyes locked on the unseen target as he gathers everything and gets ready to unleash a brutal wave of power. The blast hits like a wrecking ball, so massive the examiner freezes in total shock, his sportswear ripping apart under the brutal magical pressure, while the wall at his back starts to crumble. A brutal shock wave tears straight through the testing grounds, smashing smashing stone and earth into nothing, while the examiner just freezes, wide-eyed, his face twisted in pure disbelief at the sheer, savage power. With dust still hanging in the air, he whips around and sweetly asks the teacher, "Did I pass?" The examiner, drenched in sweat and completely knocked speechless, can only stare, shocked by what he just witnessed and by who this kid really is, even as he finally manages to say, "There are more tests." Just as the man still tries to catch up to what's happening, a calmer examiner steps in, only to size up Ragnar's magic like a pro and still slam the verdict down: he'll never pass. Then the official tosses Ragnar a training sword and declares the next test is pure swordsmanship. The rules are brutally simple: defeat him and you're in. The first examiner, furious that the challenge is aimed at him, snarls and lifts his weapon. Then the second examiner cuts in, saying magic is forbidden. If Ragnar can't fight without it, he's done. Ragnar just nods, calm as the storm, and says they should wrap this up fast, and that only makes the first examiner explode again, yelling that Ragnar is nothing but a barbarian. That insult gets answered in a flash. Ragnar drops into a low crouch and suddenly whips forward, and the combat examiner gets launched flying backward, while Ragnar's practice hammers apart into splinters from the shock of a single unseen strike. He stares at the examiner's shattered practice blade, then spots a sharp glint hiding in the splintered wood, right inside the break, so he lifts the two chunks and says you had an iron core in it. Then he looks down at his own still whole wooden sword, wearing a puzzled frown, and mutters, "Mine was just a normal wooden sword, so why is this strange, huh?" His question hangs there, then a new voice slices through the silence. Ragnar whips around to face Alicia Oldwood, jaw tight, and fires back. Her sabotage shattered his sword. He charges her with one brutal aim, make him useless, so he'd fail when he couldn't fight. Before Alicia can even open her mouth, another man strides into the exam hall, instantly stealing the air. Ragnar's eyes blow wide with shock the moment he spots him. Vorzia Grand Cascade, the school principal. A figure this high up crashing in leaves Ragnar stuttering on the spot, and he whips back to Alicia, desperate to know if this was her whole plan. Ragnar Brave stares down the towering Vorzia Grand Cascade, the school director, and calmly tells him he's got it. Today is the transfer exam day. The director watches the young man closely, clocking Ragnar's sage status and his link to the ducal house, then grimaces, realizing it'll be a pain to get him to notice. He strokes his long beard, eyes locked tight on Ragnar, who stands perfectly still, holding his breath as he waits for the verdict. After a beat of thinking, Vorzia spits out his verdict in one plain sentence: "You pass." Ragnar's eyes blow wide, stunned to the core. He blurts out a quick thank you, then snaps, "Are you sure that's okay?" Because he insists there's barely any difference in bloodline between the higher and lower ranks. Ignoring the comment, Vorzia didn't let the moment slide. He fired a direct question at the young man. Did he want to join the upper class? His mind instantly snaps to Alicia Oldwood's image, her soft smile hanging there like a silent command, fueling every last ounce of his ambition. He snaps back to the director, eyes locked and unshakable, and declares that someone here has to be protected. Then Vorzia nods along, accepting it with full confidence. As Vorzia starts to walk away, the same examiner from before comes charging in, protesting like it's the end of the world. He argues Ragnar's from the Forsaken Lands and that Ragnar's fiancé just sparked an incident. Vorzia snaps him shut, saying it loud and clear. He knows about Ragnar's move into the upper class. The examiner jerks back as the school director whips around on him, his face blazing with rage as he roars, "You idiotic fool." His voice crackled with authority, so the school director demanded to know where the examiner stood. The man introduced himself as a teacher, and Vorzia's blade of a glare sharpened even more. If he senses trouble, he should step in like a real educator and guide the students before anything blows up. With everything settled, he snapped his focus back to Ragnar and Alicia, then told Ragnar right there, as a rare exception, that he'd be allowed to use a specific dormitory. Next, Vorzia hit them both with a stern warning to keep things proper and decent, and the stunned Ragnar could only nod and agree. As Ragnar strode away, a thought hit him. This moment wasn't just another beat in the tale. It was the spark that fueled the protagonist's growth too. He pictured Alicia trudging back home, walking in and proudly letting the imposing school director know she'd arrived. Ragnar's daydream got yanked apart when Alicia barreled in, shouting his name, now wearing a brand new ornate uniform, concern written all over her face, asking if he was okay and whether anyone had said anything strange to him. Stunned, Ragnar only managed to ask if it was for a fitting since it looked cute, and a flustered Alicia immediately insisted, "I'm fine." Now he settled in with a warm drink, then calmly told her he'd passed the exam. Sure, it wasn't one he was rushing to take, but after all that ordeal, he'd made it. Alicia froze, stunned, and could only blurt out what on earth had happened. Her smile vanished and seriousness slammed into her face as she locked eyes with him and blurted out the question she'd been holding onto for ages. What on earth was the magic disease he was really battling? He had to fight his words, kicking things off by bragging that he could use every basic form of magic. And just as he started to say Alicia was on another level, her stomach let out a brutal growl that cut him off mid-sentence. A deep blush surged across her face, and the look on her face screamed shock and total mortification. Seeing her embarrassment, Ragnes shot up with a cheerful grin and suggested they hit dinner, because with the academy swallowing their days starting tomorrow, they'd better fuel up with something nutritious. While she watched him, a calm thought clicked into place. She could laugh off anyone's words as long as he stayed right there beside her. She glanced at Ragna and her tough facade melted as she admitted, quietly but honestly, that he was probably stronger than her, and that unexpected compliment left him totally stunned. The strength she talked about wasn't muscles at all, it was the rare power to swallow mental pain and still stand, the kind even battle-hardened soldiers rarely have. She planted herself in what she knew about herself because that truth was the very center of who she was. As they crossed the academy grounds, whispers snapped through the crowd. Students stared at Alicia's dual scar and muttered about the mystery man walking at her side, convinced her marriage prospects were wrecked, and Ragnes clenched his jaw, silently forcing himself to stay calm. One student with a nasty grin creeping in blurted out a vile idea. Since her status was falling, maybe he'd be allowed to take her as his concubine. The moment the words left his lips, the students crumpled to the ground, frothing at the mouth. Everybody in the crowd gasped in terror. Alicia panicked, spun toward Ragna and ordered him to stop, but he played dumb like he had no clue. Later on, inside a lecture hall, the teacher stood in front of everyone and launched into a lesson from the front of the room. Ragnar yawned like it was nothing, thinking to himself that he'd only let out a little killing intent. And still, he couldn't help doubting how weak the mainlanders really were, while another student nearby leaned in and asked if the protagonist in their story really awakens a saint in the final stage. The teacher stopped mid-sentence, her thoughts flying straight to that radiant winged girl, bright as a clean blue sky. But even with that vivid picture in her head, she couldn't pull the name from her memory. From his seat, Ragnar leaned in and fired off the answer to the question hanging in the air. He said the name was Mariana Ocean ***. The teacher, clearly blown away by his knowledge, went on to explain. The sage in the story always leans on magic with no attribute, and if you want to master something like that, you've got to reach the very pinnacle of nothingness. In the classroom, a confident female student stands there like she owns the place, chin up, smug smile sharp, glasses adjusted with total control. Across the room, Ragna slams into shock at his desk, eyes going wide as a bead of sweat crawls down his temple when the truth hits him. It's her, the heroine. In a classroom, a glasses-wearing teacher with a neat bun grins and nods, confirming the student's answer is right, even though that question was a total trap. Mariana Ocean, this braided hair girl with round glasses, fiddled with her spectacles and smiled like she totally expected it, thinking, of course Sage's pupil would be like this. While from his seat, Ragna Brave stared at her, blown away. Panic explodes in her the moment the truth hits. She's the heroine of an autumn game, and everyone's been quietly sliding her seats around like it's part of the plot so she can start a romance with the prince. Then she spots the crack in her glasses and groans, thinking, why didn't I ask to sit near the front? Mariana keeps wringing her hands, and when Alicia Oldwood turns, she offers kindly to swap seats. Flustered, Mariana blurts that she's fine and can handle it alone, and with a heavy sigh, Alicia takes her no and accepts it. A quick burst of noise yanks Rand's attention, and he barely whispers Alicia's name. Then Mariana hears it, rockets to her feet, bows low, and blurts out a flood of apologies for the whole disturbance. Later, in a calmer room, Alicia, now in a simpler dress, cradles a plate as she listens to Ragnar talk. He takes a sip from his cup, then snaps that it's not something he can ask about, saying men who dig up the past are no good. Alicia just stares, questions burning behind her eyes. Suddenly, glass shatters like thunder behind Alicia as the window erupts inward and Ragnar's face snaps cold. His hand shoots up in a split-second defensive move. A split second before impact, a shimmering, curved barrier snaps into place and blocks the blow. Alicia gasps, throws her hands over her ears, and watches the unseen projectile get ripped out of its path. Once the danger finally fades, she stretches out a shaky hand and taps the invisible wall, then fires a question at Ragnar. What is this? Calm as ever, he explains it's a hidden barrier, points out the damage, and says he'll have to fix it later. Alicia just stands there, totally stunned. He keeps talking, then reveals it's not just magic, it's a clear holy barrier, and it's the exact same kind of guardian shield that protects the entire royal capital. Alicia, still grappling with that barrier, snaps into action and stops him, then she fires off a question. How are you casting magic without incantations? And needles him with, must be nice, huh? It's basically like the way most people imagine barriers, just dumb, frozen walls like the kind robe mages magically spit out. As he keeps going, he says that with chantless casting, the doors open wide and Alicia just stares, completely shocked. He pours the coffee and through sheer magic, the stream curls into this wild, intricate pattern inside the cup. Then he goes on to explain that barriers can be bent and reshaped however he wants, and Alicia just stares with her jaw dropped, completely stunned. Magic holds the coffee in midair as it floats right in front of them. Mariana can't stop gushing about how adorable it is, but Alicia pushes on, grilling her about what else is different between a normal barrier and the one guarding the royal capital. She pauses for a heartbeat, then nails it. This barrier isn't just blocking everything, it lets you choose what slips through. Ragna nods and backs her up. He breaks it down. Advanced barriers can be tuned to let anything in or slam it back out. Then he points out the catch. They can't split stuff that's already mixed, like sugar drowned in your coffee. Alicia gets it right away, but Ragna freezes for a second, staring like, wait, did I just explain that to myself? He pivots the topic, blurting that they're out of coffee now because Alicia's beans have all been used up. And before he can say anything else, Alicia's cheeks burn as she asks if he wants to go out with her later, since he's finally free. When she sends the invitation, he jumps at it, grinning and saying, I know the perfect spot for amazing coffee. As they stride toward the cafe, Alicia leans in and asks how he even found the place. He tells her a friend pointed him there, and her face lights up with shock. Then she can't help but stare, amazed that he's got friends at all, even with everything happening to him right now. She tells Ragna how a friend clued her in on the plays, and one day, right in the middle of her lunch break in the library, someone slid up to her and sparks flew because they both loved coffee. That new face then urged her to take the shot. She drags him straight to the specialty coffee shop, and right as she calls out, "We're here," Ragnar spots the sign and reads the name Ocean. Right as he reaches for the door, it flings open, and out steps a young woman with braided hair and glasses, staring at him like she just saw a ghost, blurting out if he's the Alicia who came before. She introduces herself as Mariana and blurts out that she was just curious why Alicia stood there like a statue in front of the store. Then seeing her hits Ragnar like an electric jolt. He keeps staring as Alicia introduces him to Mariana like it's a ceremony, and he just confirms, yeah, he's the one who truly loves coffee. Mariana's a little flustered, but she still pulls together a polite greeting. When he leans in and asks if she's in his class, Mariana's eyes widen at the question. Then she confirms it. They've basically never talked before. Her calm snaps like glass. She stammers out frantic apologies, stunned that a noble like Alicia would ever step into a place like this. She blurts out the question on everyone's mind, but Alicia doesn't panic. She just says it straight. Ragna is her fiancé. Then Mariana chimes in and admits she's a noble too. This news sends Mariana into full-blown panic. She drops to the ground, sobbing apologies for her ignorance, convinced she's about to be executed, while Ragna just freezes, staring in total confusion at how far her reaction goes. Later, in the now quiet coffee shop, Mariana snapped, then apologized for losing her cool. Alicia shot back fast, saying she hadn't done a thing wrong, and Mariana blurted that she'd just gotten way too excited about finally making a friend. As Alicia took a sip of her coffee, the misunderstanding snapped into focus. She realized she was the one who messed up, because when she saw Mariana drinking coffee in the library, she'd wrongly tagged her as a commoner, just like herself. As Alicia sat there, rethinking her own place in everything, Ragnar suddenly latched onto a shocking twist. He'd heard the sage would take 2 disciples this year and figured it was him and Alicia. But now he knew something else had to be in the mix because this didn't match the rules he thought the game had taught him. And yeah, he couldn't help it. Coffee might be for commoners here, but he loved every sip. She pivoted to Mariana, soft smile blazing, and asked if this was why Mariana had been out there solo, proving Mariana had no clue about the chaos she'd just unleashed. The bespectacled girl froze in dismay, realizing it was all true, and she couldn't believe something this huge happened without her even knowing. Then she demanded to know why Alicia never told her about the whole uproar. She stumbled through her explanation, cheeks burning, admitting that right that day she'd grabbed the wrong carriage to the academy, only to realize it too late, and she was already miles out of the capital. When Ragnar heard that, his suspicions flared. Why would the carriage veer off on the day of such a huge event? Was it just bad luck or a carefully planned move? Right when its thoughts started to spiral, Alicia cut in, telling Mariana that people said she was a magic genius, but everyone also knew she had a habit of getting totally scatterbrained. With pride in her eyes, Mariana snapped that magic was her gift, then quickly joked that her parents always told her she was hopeless at everything else, because the moment she said parents, Ragnar's attention snapped to her. His question about them landed at the worst possible moment, right as Alicia nudged him under her breath. Mariana's face fell into a deep, quiet sorrow, and she told him the truth. Her parents were gone, lost to an illness a year ago. Ragnar snapped into regret and blurted out an immediate apology for asking something so thoughtless. She shot him a quick smile, and her eyes softened as she swore it was all okay, because the only reason she was here right now was thanks to them. Her smile flared back to life as she snapped into host mode, reminding them she'd invited them and served them nothing yet. Then she poured them both coffee like it was long overdue. Alicia takes a sip of the coffee Mariana made, and her eyes snap wide with pure, delighted surprise as she tells her just how insanely delicious it is. She whips around to Mariana, eyes wide, and says it tastes nothing like the coffee Ragnar makes. And when Ragnar takes a careful sip and admits it really is different, Mariana only smiles like she already knew. He blurts out, wondering why their coffee turns out so wildly different even though they're using the same beans. Seabass, while he savors his own cup. Then Riley leans in and says the bitterness in Ragnar's coffee has to be a metaphor for his life, and that one hits the young master like a total mind-bender. He swats the thought aside and whirls back to Mariana, declaring that from now on he'll treat her like his mentor, and the second Mariana panics, Alicia swoops in fast, laughing off the whole thing and telling her he's only kidding. She darts her eyes between the two, pauses like something doesn't add up, and says it's weird, because for nobles, they don't look scary in the slightest. Her words snap straight into a memory. She tells me how a kid in the neighborhood once warned her that crossing a noble, even just a little, means death. She goes on, telling me that right around then, back in her childhood, she was suddenly slammed by a noble's carriage. The memory hits hard. He's sprawled on the dirt road, injured and utterly alone, while the folks in the carriage couldn't care less, exactly like the child warned would happen. She tells him the accident crushed her eyesight, and when her parents heard a rumor that coffee could sharpen vision, they decided the whole family would start drinking it. And before they could even blink, she finishes with a dizzy, ecstatic grin, then boom, the whole family gets hooked, totally swept up by coffee's rich, unforgettable magic. As the talk dragged on, Alicia spun toward Mariana and asked, "So, can you use magic?" Mariana grinned and said, "Yeah," then admitted the one skill she mastered better than anything else. She dropped the truth she could use recovery magic, the power to heal people, and Alicia's face snapped to shock because abilities like that are insanely rare. Ragnar, all ears, nodded quietly and confirmed it. That bombshell hit Alicia hard and made her remember a game they'd played, where Saint Mariana could pull off miracle-level magic, curing diseases, tossing demons out, and even regrowing lost limbs. But right here in the real world, Alicia knew damn well that recovery magic for other people was something only a handful of folks could do. Mariana let out her reason with a heavy, mournful stare. 1 year ago, when her parents fell ill, she'd been powerless, and that sting fueled her non-stop studying so she'd have the strength to save someone precious if it ever happened again. Alicia was so shaken she pulled her into a tight hug, then she noticed the odd silence, no other customers in sight. The emotional high snapped in half when Ragnar confessed he was the last one inside, and that he'd shut the shop door behind him. Alicia froze, eyes blazing wide with sudden understanding. His confession threw her into a full-on panic. She snatched his shirt, demanded he open the door right now, and accused him of blocking business, while Mariana stood there with a little smile like she already knew. Mariana stayed calm and crushed the tension. She told them everything was okay, saying she'd been locked in on her studies lately and she always closed the shop on holidays anyway. Once the misunderstanding was finally gone, Ragnar and Alicia geared up to leave and thanked Mariana for her time. Just as they stepped out, Alicia couldn't help asking why Mariana wasn't heading to the academy dormitory. Since she's a sage's kid, Alicia figured she'd be exempt from the rules. She paused in the doorway of her home, wearing a warm, satisfied smile, and when they asked why, she just said she loved this house. Then her eyes locked onto Alicia, and she stepped in with a reassuring nod, letting her know to come find her the moment anything went wrong at the academy. Mariana's kind words hit Alicia like a spark, leaving her frozen for a second as heat rushed up her cheeks. She stared at that raw sincerity, realized it was absolutely dazzling, and told her that her words alone were more than enough. Then she shot back a heartfelt thank you. Right outside, Ragnar stepped in, and before anyone could breathe, Mariana wore a grim face and demanded he hand Alicia over to her. Ragnar shut her down on the spot, no hesitation, and Alicia was left staring like, what on earth were they planning? He turned and started walking away with Alicia, and even then her cheeks still carried that soft blush. As they crossed the night, she finally looked up at him and demanded his approval, pushing for his nod that she really was a good girl. Meanwhile, Mariana watched them disappear, her expression heavy with thought, and she couldn't stop replaying Alicia's gorgeous eyes. Those eyes didn't play games. They stared straight at people, no mask, no tricks. And it hit her. The same unshakable gaze had been there from the very first moment she laid eyes on Alicia. As they kept walking under the city's spires, Ragnar suddenly snapped into realization. He said he finally understood, like a strong inner core always shapes people into something like this. She shot back a quick, simple yes, then tilted her gaze up at him and asked, "Tell me, have you ever seen that same thing in anyone before?" He stared down at her and talked about eyes with a will so strong it could fight fate itself. Then he added straight up that those eyes were beautiful and cute. That bold compliment slammed Alicia's brain into overdrive and sent her blushing hard. Ragnar, clearly flustered too, rushed to backpedal, insisting he wasn't the prince type at all. And just like that, the two kept walking, trading playful, casual flirtation. This whole thing was supposed to be simple. A villain with a face, Alicia Oldwood, sharp-eyed and ruthless, was set to collide with an ordinary girl, Marion Ocean, the kind of commoner you'd never notice, and yeah, their clash was inevitable. These two fated girls were destined to clash in a brutal, snow-choked wasteland, until one of them got completely wiped out. In this reality, they chow down together. Mariana beams and blurts that Alicia's mixed sandwich looks insanely delicious, and Alicia, a little flustered, immediately offers her a bite. Ragnar flashes a brave smile, muttering to himself that the kind of harmony only true friends can share is pure magic. That smile doesn't last. Before it even fades, dread claws its way in as he can't stop asking how everything got this messed up. Meanwhile, Mariana clocks his missing presence and blurts, "Where did Ragnar go?" Because the second break time kicks off, he's gone, yet he's always so painfully serious about his classes. He sequestered himself to think, because now that the world has seen him with Alicia, he knows the backlash is going to explode, especially with the criticism aimed at her, the girl someone left to rot in the wasteland. As he storms away, he keeps staring at those two girls, trying to figure out how the hero and that wicked noblewoman are supposed to get along. What kind of messed up fate is this? So he just shrugs and accepts his role, telling himself he's totally okay being nothing more than a side character. Alicia's mind is spinning too, clashing the calm she feels now with the world from before. Back then, Mariana, even as a commoner, lived through school days in peace. But in that same timeline, Alicia already lost their duel and got shoved into the frontier territory. Ragnar drops his gaze to the broken sword in the dirt and calls it right there. This time, Mariana isn't the one he has to fight. Still reeling from the original story, he couldn't stop replaying the image of Alicia dropping to her knees in defeat after that duel, so the real question burned in his mind. Who could have beaten her like that? His memory spat out a key detail. The prince had started that duel, and now his curiosity went feral, wondering exactly how this whole new timeline was about to play out. He tore across the academy grounds, chasing the sweet trail of adoring students' voices, and when he peeked around the corner, he heard them yell, "Edward!" So yeah, he'd found his man. Edward Grand Edderdam, a young man, flashed a smooth smile and turned down lunch, claiming he was already booked. While Ragnar lurked in the distance, spotting Alicia's old fiancé and remembering how, in the game, chasing the prince was the always go this way classic move. He remembered how the game was built. Edward was basically the starter boss, a tutorial prince meant to fold fast. Then the thought hit, Edward's eyes snapped to someone and he said, "So we meet again." Ragnar weighed the original story in his head, certain this was where the heroine and the protagonist were supposed to start getting close, until Edward's voice snapped him out of it, begging forgiveness for making someone wait. To his total shock, the person waiting was Alicia, and she laughed off his surprise like she'd just walked in, no one more than her. Then she leaned in and told the prince to drop the stiff "Your Highness" and call him Edward instead, and the moment he heard it, he practically lit up. He grinned at her like, "Remember, you already shouted my name once before, back in the castle town the day they first met before school even started." She blurted it out, cheeks flushed, admitting she'd had no clue about his royal status back then, and even though she'd hesitated, she now swore their reunion at the academy was a total act. Leaning in, he blurted out exactly what he wanted. No title, just the name only she could call him by, and when Alicia felt how real his sincerity was, she could barely get out the first letter. She clasped her hands tight and blushed hard, murmuring the prince's name like it was everything, so heartfelt that Edward's earnest gaze left Ragna, watching from afar, cringing with embarrassment. His discomfort flips into full-blown confusion as he scrambles through every memory, swearing there was never a Patricia in this game, so the only answer he can reach is that she's somehow swapped herself in as the heroine, Mariana. As he keeps watching them from the bench, Edward's unexpected softness throws Ragna into deeper confusion, and the question won't leave him. Who is this person, this Alicia, really? Suddenly, a bunch of other young noblemen pop up around Edward and his partner, crowding in and grinning as they tell him, straight up, they won't let him get ahead because they're here too, and one of them even snaps that Patricia is a terrible person for stealing all their attention like that. A sudden realization hits Ragnar like a lightning bolt. His eyes flare wide as it clicks. Those guys are the romanceable targets from the game. Alicia somehow pulled off the impossible. She's built a full-on reverse harem by gathering every main love interest right around her, and with a bright grin, she invites them all to lunch like it's totally normal. She raises this huge basket like it's armor, tells them she's totally fine, and announces she's already made extra portions, because she always pulls the reverse harem move straight from the playbook. Ragna clocks the scene and panic keeps climbing because Alicia is straight up stealing the protagonist's spot. She's already flipped the affection flags for every man, and that's a can't be done on a first playthrough miracle. Now Ragna realizes something seriously wrong. These guys are heirs to powerful families, so they should all have fiancés lined up already. He makes his choice right then, staying far away from that messy group for good, because with relationships this tangled, graduation could spell disaster for someone, and he wants absolutely no part of that. And right there, one last thought slams into his mind, like it's always been there. Sure enough, just as he guessed, there's one person in this twisted version who needs to be watched like a hawk. Ragnar's mind snapped to another big player, Jalsi's Granignite, the second son of the Ignite ducal family, and from a distance he clocked this guy's gentle act. But when Jalsi's told his companions he'd rather chow down with them than in the cafeteria, insisting it was way tastier, Ragnar couldn't shake the feeling, was this kindness real or just a perfect little performance? He remembered the other day when Jaleesis slumped on a bench with Alicia and Prince Edward, then casually tried to pry into the mysterious girl, pressing her about the magician rattling the brave territory. And yeah, it was a direct jab at Ragnar himself. That memory locked in Ragnar's judgment. He already knew from the game that Jaleesis was trouble, and rushing in carelessly would be a disaster. He remembered where the boy came from, born to a concubine, raised brutally as a backup insurance for the main heir. And yeah, in the story, his route was pure darkness, one hard road aimed at pulling him out of a toxic family nightmare. Because of all that, he became a danger you couldn't ignore. His whole personality could flip the moment the people around him made a choice, turning from a gentle friend into a menacing threat in an. Ragnar couldn't shake the weird feeling that, even with the Ignite family hunting him down, he and Jaleesis still hadn't run into each other. Until now, seeing him hanging with Alicia like it was nothing, Ragnar figured it was the perfect moment to back off and give them space. He slipped away and crouched on a rooftop, firing up his thoughts. His mission hadn't changed. Make sure Alicia could live in peace and stop the disaster that was closing in on her. Then, right behind him, a voice snapped that peeking wasn't exactly a proud habit. The voice belonged to the school principal, Vorzia Grand Cascade. He crouched on the roof's edge, power whipping around him in a raging swirl, staring down at Ragnar. Vorzia snapped at him that the roof was pure danger, and Ragnar couldn't help but find that painfully ironic. Then the principal went straight for the throat, demanding to know what Ragnar was doing up there. That wild confrontation hit at exactly the right moment. Ragnar clocked it instantly and seized the chance to finally ask what he desperately needed to know. His thoughts snapped straight to what worried him. He stared at a girl with unnaturally blonde hair, the dark roots peeking through like a secret she couldn't hide. She was boxed in by the same pack of young noblemen, an impossible reverse harem, and Ragnar's gut feeling hardened into certainty. She was exactly who he had to investigate. He stood right in front of the school principal, eyes locked and voice hard as he dropped the truth. Patricia, the girl at the center of this messed up fate, was a reincarnator like him, and then he fired off his demand. Tell me everything you know about her. The hunt for the student everyone calls Patricia keeps going. Ragna Brave is dead set on tearing into her origins, her past, and every last bit of her magic. While Principal Vorzia Grand Cascade watches, she mulls over the name Patricia Kindred. With that one question hanging in the air, the real shock is this: can they finally drag the truth about the second reincarnated person into the light? At the mission desk, Ragnar zeroes in on Alicia and demands to know why she screams suspicious. And as she fills out her paperwork, she stays stone calm, flat out denying any secret schemes, insisting she got in the same way as everyone else, by passing the entrance exam. Suspicion still clings to the air. Ragnar can't stop replaying it in his head. The game's heroine was deliberately torn away from her friends during that recent incident, and if Patricia really orchestrated it, then some noble had to be the one who swapped the carriages. In a flash, a sharp mind nails the most likely culprit, and it's the Ignite family behind the whole conspiracy. Ragnar shifts his focus to Principal Vorzia, who nods at his caution. Yet she insists that if their real goal is still a mystery, it's safer to keep them enrolled and watched than to let them roam free without supervision. Magnetize conceded the point, then sighed that it would be so much nicer to just live in peace, and that wish hit the older man right in the heart. Vorzia gets hit with comment prompts to drop some advice, and that message jolts Ragnar. He remembers he's still an academy student, and he's absolutely allowed to enjoy being young. Then he fires back, asking why Ragnar insists on trapping himself in such a tight, punishing life. Ragnar snaps his head toward him and flashes a bright, almost cheerful grin, then asks the principal if he's forgotten the pride of the brave family. His smile dies the moment he turns away, and his hand clenches into a brutal fist. Vorzio stares, remembering that the brave family's blood is supposed to fight off hardship right up to the last breath. He thought Ragnar was clinging to that ideal with everything he had, but seeing this sudden resignation, Vorzio starts to wonder, did the kid's resolve really break that easily? Just as Vorzia is about to finish his sentence, Ragnar whips around and hammers the principal straight in the face with a brutal, bone-shaking punch. His fist slammed forward with a thunderous crack, pure force ripped through the air, and the stone wall behind the principal exploded into rubble. The impact hit like thunder across the academy grounds, and the students nearby yelped in pure panic. They felt the ground shudder and stared around, desperate to figure out what just crashed down out of nowhere. Back at the epicenter, he stood with his head bowed and his fists still thrust out, and even after that brutal hit, Principal Vorzia stayed upright, still standing, totally unshaken. Ragnar's fists hung just shy of his face, pinned there by an unseen force, while the principal wore cold, unshakable composure. So Vorzia stayed untouched, completely untouched. When he got deterred, he snapped his glare at the principal, and menace dripped from every word. Then he flat out insisted this was exactly what he wanted, and that he'd follow through no matter what, warning Vorzia that if Alicia ever got hurt, forgiveness was impossible, even if the academy sat in the principal's own private playground. Vorzia stared the threat down with unshakable eyes, then took the challenge like it was nothing. Fine, he said, cool as ice. If Ragnar wanted this, then Vorzia would have to show how unbreakable his conviction really was. The principal then pivoted to Marion Ocean, and when Ragnar got hit with the question, he snapped back, demanding what fate even had to do with it and calling the whole setup a nightmare. Vorzia hammered his point home, saying Mariana's a kid with a destiny that's built for greatness. But then he snapped a warning. Right now, something massive is twisting her fate, and it's spiraling her straight into madness. He said this distortion would keep spreading until it swallowed the whole academy too, because everyone there carried a heavy fate, and the principal warned that if it kept going, the nation itself would split clean down the middle. Light on one side, darkness on the other. Then he handed Ragnar a crystal-clear command. Right now, Mariana's guardian is gone, she's got no strength left to fight fate, and Ragnar's job is to stand between her and disaster. Far from the main chaos, a rugged mountain range looms over a crystal-clear sky, sitting in its own little world. In a deep, echoing tunnel, Mariana Ocean clenches her fists and admits, straight to herself, that her nerves are starting to hit. When she asks if it's her first time in a dungeon, Ragnar steps right beside her and confirms it, yet his mind is already locked on one thing: protecting her, while he quietly wonders how much Principal Vorzia really knows. He watches as Mariana finally cracks and admits she's scared. They've made it to the practical training dungeon where students put their magic to the test, and yeah, the safety rules are locked in for a reason. One careless second and you're toast, just like those other students fighting a winged beast right now. Nearby, another tense conversation kicks off. Alicia, slipping into the name Patricia, tells Prince Edward she feels utterly weak, and he steadies her with a promise. He'll protect her no matter what. Watching them lock into that embrace, Ragnar's face twists dark and bitterness hits him hard, because deep down he realizes the dungeon isn't just a fight for survival to most of these people, it's a shortcut to snag their crush. Still, his focus doesn't slip. He knows something huge is lurking deep in this dungeon, tied straight to his sacred relic, and he can't stop wondering what the others will do about the fake. Just as his thoughts start to settle, Mariana bursts out, calling for Alicia, who's only just arrived, and Ragna instantly scrambles because Alicia looks like a battle-hardened adventurer, and the thought of being back in a dungeon with her makes his heart race. Alicia quickly apologizes for the delay, says they should move out, and right then her arrival grabs the eyes of another student. With blonde hair and a sharp little drill scar smirk, she snipes at the girl, Mariana, and laughs her off as some stubborn commoner who's only trying to hang onto the academy by buttering up the nobles. Her companion jumps right in, calling her Lady Ekaterina like it's no big deal. That insult snaps straight into Rand's focus, and shock hits him like a wave. He recognizes the girl and her drill-haired partner as the two who used to be close to Alicia. He listens while Katarina's voice drips with contempt, sneering at how many lowlifes crowd the place. Then she snarls that those filthy slum monkeys and even peasants playing dress-up don't belong here at all. As Katarina struts right past, she loudly announces this is an academy for refined nobles. Then Mariana just stands there, stunned like she got hit by words. She swivels to Alicia, dark grin stretching across her face, promising to drive every filthy thing out for her, and the threat makes Mariana jerk and flinch. Before this thing can spiral out of control, Ragnus lunges into the moment and barks a call to stop it cold. Before he can step in, another student bursts in, calm as can be, instantly stealing Ragnus' focus and even making startle Mariana. The newcomer greets Ekaterina by name with a calm smile, and that smugness instantly ignites Ekaterina. She snaps that she wants to know how the girl dares to act so high and mighty, storms about commoners getting into the academy, and hurls insults at her as a broken failure. Unshaken, the student steps straight in front of Mariana and tells Ekaterina to take all her hatred. She's already earned it. Then she snaps back that Mariana isn't part of this fight at all. Finally, she throws down a bold challenge, daring Ekaterina to ask for a duel or anything else she wants. She leans in and tells Mariana that Katarina could take on the sage's disciples. Maybe even Katarina could take her own shot. But as she whispers her verdict right by Mariana's ear, she's certain of one thing: Mariana won't win. Katarina's rage erupts. She snaps at the defender for getting cocky just because she built a monkey mountain, then hisses that it fits her perfectly to spend her whole life living on coffee. The bizarre jab leaves Mariana staring, completely stunned. She just shuts her eyes and breaks into a smile, then nods and says she'll drink it, straight up, because she loves coffee. She watched Ekaterina, beaten and furious, turn away in pure disgust, then click her tongue and snarl that the whole thing was a buzzkill before ordering her crew to storm out, groaning about how awful the smell of beans was. From afar, Ragnar Brave stared at the wreckage, and realization hit him hard as he saw Mariana and Alicia standing side by side. He lunged closer and Alicia whipped her gaze to him, looking crushed. She admitted his strength and begged for forgiveness, saying it was her fault for getting pulled into trouble with that strange person. He shot back, swearing she looked awesome, cheeks barely tinged with a blush, then admitted it hit him hard right there, and that's why he'd come to like her so deeply. Right after that, Mariana Ocean cut in, pointing out that Ekaterina had also roasted Alicia, calling her damaged and even mocking her coffee. And with a grin so bright it felt dangerous, Ragnar casually asked if he should just kill them for disrespecting both of them. She lifted her hand to her chin, stared hard like she was weighing doom and destiny, and her foot kept tapping on the rocky ground as his shockingly wild proposal sank in. After they wiped that confrontation off their backs, the trio plunged into a massive dungeon packed with jagged, glowing crystals, and Ragnar's eyes widened as he confirmed exactly where they were. Mariana later spilled it all inside the dungeon. Their every step was a threat, with traps snapping shut and monsters crashing in non-stop, one after another. Suddenly, something ripped out of the darkness, an arrow blasting straight at Ragna, and Alicia's eyes went wide as she screamed, "Ragna," warning him to dodge. He stayed ice calm, snagging every arrow with his fingers just millimeters from his throat, and told them, straight-faced, that a protective barrier forms around his body every single time. He admits his magic isn't foolproof. If his power ever runs dry, that barrier can be broken through, no matter how strong it looks. Alicia watches in awe and calls it an extraordinary skill. He keeps talking and then drops the truth. The barrier was born way back when he was knocking on death's door. It started from one simple thought: if he wrapped his whole body in protection, fear couldn't get to him. And suddenly a memory slams into place. As a kid, curled up inside a glowing sphere of safety, while monstrous beasts and savage birds circled above the darkness of that forest. He says he's been practicing ever since. Now the barrier snaps on by itself, no thinking required, and then we cut to him strolling down a corridor as a storm of arrows rockets his way, only to slam to a stop inches from his body, all blocked by that invisible shield. Her explanation wraps up, and right away Mariana, clearly worried, asks if that brave territory is truly a terrifying place. Alicia grins and gently tells her, nope, it's actually a really nice place. Seeing a perfect opening, Alicia pitches a plan to have her and Mariana join Ragna at his place during summer break so they can train in the mountains, and Mariana snaps back instantly, fired up and gushing that she'd love to go. She confidently launches the plan with Brave-style boot camp, promising that this training will turn everyone into a user of chantless magic. Then a burst of the three energetic silhouettes flashes in their minds. Mariana is bouncing with pure excitement because Ragnar is finally going to train her. Alicia looks a little shaky and tells her to go all out, then quietly begs her not to get killed, while Ragnar clenches his fist and takes the responsibility head-on. As it all spirals forward, Mariana fiddles with her glasses and can't stop wondering what's really going on. As they push deeper into the dungeon, Mariana can't hold back her curiosity. She whips around to the others and demands to know why every monster they destroy just disappears, leaving nothing behind. She throws out a theory that ancient sages forged the dungeon, and every mystery makes her eyes burn with curiosity. Then she spots a possible clue in the wall's soil and swings her tiny tool to take a sample. Right as her hand reaches out, Alicia's voice slices through the air. Stop. Right before she can even blink, a massive glowing magic circle explodes out of the floor, and the blast rockets her into the air, her tools scattering as she's trapped inside that blazing light. Ragna and Alicia freeze in stunned silence as he screams her name, while Alicia's stomach drops in terror, realizing Mariana might have just unleashed something horrifying. They drop into the ancient hall with a brutal thud. Ragnar clutches Mariana and the other student, then he sweeps his gaze across the grim wreckage. Collapsing pillars, scattered bones, the whole place falling apart. Mariana pushes up her glasses and blurts the question crushing in their heads, where did they get thrown to? Two women stepped quietly on their feet and he kept sweeping the area with his eyes, then it hit him. The architecture looked painfully familiar, like he'd seen it before, and he realized they'd probably been marched straight to the dungeon's lowest level. His companion froze, stunned. He calmly sizes up their mess and realizes they've fallen for a teleportation trap, the kind of move only a story's protagonist would get hit with, and beside him, the other student can do nothing but stare, stunned by the chamber's massive, looming wall. Then her focus snaps to Mariana, who's somehow clutching a pickaxe. So she snatches it away in a flash and barks that personal safety comes first, glaring at the shaken girl and warning her she can't even drink coffee if she's still all banged up. He snatched a coffee pot out of nowhere, poured a steaming cup, and pushed it toward the stunned Mariana, dead serious, like this could be her final drink, while Mariana just froze, staring in disbelief at where the coffee even came from and why she'd been hauling it around. Mariana takes the cup and drops the golden rule, never walk into a dungeon without your own provisions, and the other student nods like they've heard it 100 times. Right there, watching their little break, Ragna decides he's joining too, and he asks for a cup as well. He takes the drink and the smile drops from his face as dark reality hits, because getting to the bottom of a dungeon is basically a death sentence, with help out of reach and the local monsters offering zero salvation. Her voice slices right through his spiraling thoughts and calls his name, and when he looks at her, a calm, reassuring smile blooms. He's ready to fire back with a counterpoint. She keeps talking, worry dripping in every word, saying this place isn't even in their studies and they're sealed off from any kind of help. Then she points straight at the danger, snaps why he isn't freaking out, and asks if he knows something they don't. He tries to steady his companion, telling Alicia they're going to be okay, and swears there's still something they can do the second they finally catch their breath. His eyes drift as memories hit him, replaying the magic circle that yanked them here. Now all three students stand inside a massive ancient cavern, swallowed by crumbling pillars. That defender still can't shake the feeling, because in her mind the game's story is crystal clear. Alicia is the villainess, and traps like this are exactly her kind of masterpiece. And now she's stuck, wondering who's really behind it. She shoves her doubts aside and decides, no more stalling, they have to move forward right now, and she points out one more thing. A pendant is waiting deeper in the dungeon, and it's the key to their whole strategy. She talks about the sacred relic, an ornate, terrifyingly powerful artifact buried and sleeping in the dungeon's deepest chamber, the one the story insists they'll need to save the country before the very end. Ariana's face hardens with purpose, realizing the relics are tied to the saints awakening. Ragna steps up beside her and nods, saying they have to go collect him. Next, the student defender slams out the plan. They've got to beat the golem guarding the door up ahead, then once it's down, they'll spot a teleportation magic circle that shoots them straight to the exit. Ragnar's companions snap their heads toward him, demanding to know if that's really how it works, and Ragnar nods, saying the records swear that beating the guardian of the deepest level is what lets you come back. But he drops his voice and admits the truth. There's more, and he's holding it back for now because he isn't ready to share what he knows. As soon as he speaks, the whole group's eyes snap to a gigantic, jaw-dropping wall of doors carved with intricate detail, built right into the cavern itself. The student defender blurts out, thrilled that this could be the exit. Then Mariana slams the brakes, noting the terrifying truth: there's no golem guarding the door. Ragnar's smile drops and his face turns deadly serious the moment he realizes what he's up against. He and his crew braced for an empty chamber, then something vile lunged at them, and Alicia stepped forward, refusing to back down, as a towering one-eyed slime with a single, unblinking gaze dripped and hissed in front of her. The creature warped its shape and popped up right behind Mariana, and the moment he sensed the threat, he screamed her name in pure panic. He lunged ahead, snatched Mariana into his arms, and bolted away right as a burst of fire tore up the spot she'd been standing on, and when they hit the ground, a shadowy figure was cackling inside the flames. Out of the inferno, a brand new monster clawed its way into the world, an enormous, fire-wrapped demon that towered over them all, radiating raw, terrifying power with every breath. Mariana was still rattled, then stared at the demon's power and swore it was like the sun itself, so bright it burned. He could only nod, face set hard as that scorching heat slammed into him. He barked at both of them to back up, refusing to get within striking distance, and then he realized exactly what it was. A demon, the same one Alicia had bound her soul to near the end of the original story. Then his gaze snapped to Alicia, standing stone still with a dagger clutched in her hand, her eyes bulging in shock as her mind got yanked back to that brutal memory. The instant a match was decided, and she was crowned the winner under the name Patricia. Her memories snapped into focus. She was on her knees, crushed after she picked a fight and got wrecked by some commoner, while insults rained down and her family's pride got dragged through the mud. The voice told her she was pathetic, and then everything around her swam with pure heartbreak until a gentle voice finally said her name. He snapped her out of the nightmare, clamped his hands on her face, and forced her to look him in the eyes, then said her name, steady and clear, like he was promising she was safe. Her eyes went wide and sparkled as they locked onto him, and a hot blush flooded her face. She stammered, totally stunned, momentarily speechless by the sudden, intense worry in him. She stared as he bolted past, shouting that he had to know what he was about to do. Ragna skidded to a stop, swung toward Alicia. The heroine and the student defender then made it crystal clear. They were all taking Aquavale, and everyone needed to stay exactly where they stood. He snapped a look over his shoulder, eyes burning, and promised he'd kill that bastard. With that, he surged forward and drowned out the slime monster's ugly cackle, locking his eyes on the flame demon, swearing it would pay for what it did, and for the trauma it dragged his fiancée into. Ragna ripped loose a roaring spiral of water that crashed straight into the fire demon, and as the world drenched it, he watched his own body seem to shrink under the brutal magic. The swirling water snapped into a razor-sharp arc of pure pressure, and as he launched through the air, he drove that crushing current with terrifying precision. His strike landed perfectly, slicing the demon's head clean off from where they stood. Then the hero started to celebrate, and Alicia screamed that the real danger was already creeping up from behind. The severed head and body parts crashed onto the ground, then vanished on impact like they were never there, and the demon froze, eyes wide, muttering, "What just hit me?" as confusion swallowed it whole. With a sharp snap, the head whipped back into place on its neck, locking on perfectly. Ragnar stared down the fully restored demon and, with chilling calm, admitted that an attack that massive still didn't finish it. Like even the thing itself couldn't believe its own survival. Cool as ice, he said it was no big deal. Go on, demon. Try to land a hit on him, and Ragnar didn't flinch. He surged forward again, smashing the distance to get back in and face his can't-die enemy. He stares down at the demon as it regenerates, cold, unimpressed, and snaps that it won't dodge him with some sloppy defense, calling its last attack pathetic and beneath even the lowest-ranked brave. Still pinned to the ground, the demon can't help but wonder if it just got careless. Spitting back at the insult, the demon snarls, "Talk is cheap," and then it lunges toward him, clawed hand out, dark energy crackling like lightning. The creature's strike lands with a roar, swallowing him whole in a savage wave of fire. As the inferno rages, the demon reels, totally thrown off by the fact that Ragnar isn't reacting at all. It screams for something to burn. But in the middle of that roaring fire, Ragnar just stands there, stone still and completely unharmed. He doesn't even flinch, saying that a fire dragon's breath is way hotter than this, and the demon screams out, shocked he's still standing. His focus snaps away from the fight and plunges into a darker mystery. He stares straight through the demon's core and demands, out loud, "Who's in there?" while begging the one inside to finally show themselves. A chilling truth hits him: demons aren't born with bodies, so there's only one answer. A human is hiding inside that creature, the kind of person who struck a deal with a demon to get exactly what they wanted. With all that in mind, he squares up against the hissing demon again, then snaps his hand forward, ready to touch it and prove where that magic power is coming from. The second his fingers touch, the demon's body erupts in violent convulsions, shredding itself from the inside. Then Ragnar's eyes widen in shock as it lets out one last, tortured scream, realizing it's self-destructing. The slime monster clenches down on its own violent rage, fighting to keep the destructive energy from spilling out. Then Mariana screams, "I can't hold it," as the whole mass finally erupts in one massive explosion. As the cavern erupted in flames, Ragnar threw himself in front of Mariana and the other student, taking the fiery blast straight through his body. Then the ground split, cracking and shattering beneath the force. He kneels in the wreckage, jaw set tight, frustration blazing as he fights to figure out who's really steering that demon. Alicia hurtles to his side, her voice trembling as she asks if he's okay, and another student blurts that he's burned, but he waves it off, calling it just a scratch. Alicia locks eyes with him and reminds him of the vow he made. He'd protect her no matter what. She glances back at Alicia and the relief hits hard. Alicia's face softens, the anger gone, and a shy blush creeps in as Alicia quietly starts to think. Just as gratitude blooms on her face, Ragnar's focus snaps to something else, his expression hardening in an instant. Alicia catches the shift and blurts, "What's wrong?" During the chaos, he noticed a teleportation magic circle flashing in the fight, and now he's convinced it's their ticket back to the surface, shocking Mariana and the other students. He leads them straight to the spot, and there, glowing magic circles blaze across the stone floor, so he shoves them forward to step on it, hiding a jeweled artifact behind his back. The second their feet hit the circle, a blinding burst of light crashes over all three of them, firing up the teleportation magic like it's been waiting for them, activating it with. In that dizzying burst of light, his mind stays razor sharp, and the moment he feels the enemy's magic power, he finally understands exactly what it's like to seize it. The teleportation glow dies out and the cavern suddenly goes dead silent. The dungeon practice spirals into chaos, but Ragnar's focus locks in, find the enemy's main body and wipe them out. In a once grand, now filthy room, Alicia Oldwood, Patricia, drops to her knees, coughing hard as the dungeon training chaos spills all around her, like she masterminded the whole disaster from the shadows. A young woman with long, light hair storms into the doorway, her face twisted with pure contempt. She snaps that Alicia is pathetic. Then, when Alicia clocks who she is, Alicia blurts out "Jalousies," and the woman answers with a chilling question. Did she actually manage to recover the sacred artifact? Stunned by her silent failure, Jalousies snaps and slams Alicia across the face. Then Alicia can only choke out a weak apology, admitting she never managed to pull off the task. This alt snarls as she stomps a fallen Alicia, her fury spilling out in every word. She can't believe Alicia would mess up, not when a demon's got her in its grip. Alicia can only crumple on the ground and keep yelling the same sorry words. Breathing hard, Alicia blurts out that she got cut off, then a vivid memory hits. Ragnar, fearless, sprinting in to stop it, and she finally tells her enraged master his name. Galassi scoffs at the name and brushes Ragnar off like he's nothing, just some backyard noble from the frontier. A nobody who was supposed to fade into the background as the story went on. She grips her head, seething because her whole scheme to turn Alicia into the story's villain just blew up. Every last bit of it is his fault. And in her mind, she can already see Ragnar standing beside the heroine, Mariana. Her frustration spikes when she realizes the route through Edward is dead and her old followers have turned useless. Even after she blackmailed their families, Jaleesis watches, and Alicia spots the bleeding in her hand, urging them to treat the wound. Jaleesis snaps her cold, unreadable gaze on Alicia, shuts her down in an instant, then orders her to stop talking before demanding she strip. Her voice turns gentle just for a heartbeat as she asks where Alicia got hurt. Then Alicia drops to her knees, bared back showing a whole map of scars and brand new wounds. Her hand blazed with a gentle, healing light, sealing the wounds across the young man's chest like it never happened. Then his injuries were gone. He stared at the ring on his finger, lifted it toward her, and just said, "Here." While she kept working, her mind snapped back to his opponent, because then it hit her. He was a reincarnator too, just like her, and she still couldn't believe he'd cut off her subordinates' heads with one brutal swing. She kept spiraling in thought, wondering if his situation matched hers. Maybe his choices weren't something he could have helped. But then the truth hit. After he went self-destruct, his whole body vanished. She snapped her focus back to the young man, rested a gentle hand on his head, and let him have it, acknowledging it was a flashy loss, then grinning and praising him anyway, telling him he did an amazing job. He jerked his eyes up at her, gratitude blazing across his face as his words tangled when he tried to thank her. Then emotion crashed in and he stepped forward, wrapped her in a tight embrace, and murmured her name. Ah, Jaleesis. She yanked him into a tight hug, teasing, "Crybaby, but a winner." Then she grinned and blurted, "Patricia, my adorable little brother," and dropped the bomb. He was one of the rare ones, carrying a demon inside him from the day he was born, just like her. She leaned back just a little, her smile soft as she met his eyes, and told him right now she was fine staying his big sister. He pressed his head to hers one last time, and his voice cracked as the truth of his failure came pouring out. He admitted the man he fought was terrifyingly strong, and there was no way he could ever beat him. As he shouted her name again, her face turned steel hard, and she thought, he's still the same old crybaby, just like before. Just like that, comfort got yanked away, and now he was kneeling before her in that lavish room. The young man raised his eyes as her fingers tipped up his chin. Her voice wasn't sisterly anymore. It turned sharp and commanding as she asked, "So, what do you want?" Her question hit him like a shock, and he started stammering, eyes bulging as he scrambled to figure out what he really wanted. He finally snapped, clutching his head in agony as the words burst out, his one crushing obsession, Alicia. He confessed he wanted her all to himself, even if it meant ruining her, and his mind spiraled into a sick fantasy where, if he chained her up, they'd be locked together forever. She listened to his desperate confession, then calmly sliced through his logic. Taking Alicia, she said, meant he'd first have to kill the one she was tied to right now. Her brother couldn't even form words, and the brutal truth finally hit him. She clocked his hesitation, stepped in close, and cradled his face with tender hands, telling him to trust her, because he was special. And if he could just dig deep and keep moving, she swore success was right there within reach. With her cheering words still ringing in the air, she closed the distance and pressed her lips against his. That wasn't a simple kiss. Her lips parted just enough for a tiny bite, like she was savoring his very essence. He jerked himself back and pure energy roared through his body, his magic aura exploding like thunder as he thanked her, swore he'd give it everything next time, and promised he'd win for sure. Jaleesis just stood there, silent, watching his power skyrocket right before her eyes. Fresh fire burned in her brother's renewed determination, and that's when a dark-haired kid with pierced ears stepped up, looking straight at her and saying her name like she'd been watching from his side the whole time. She shot her confidant a playful wink and smugly spilled how she'd won, because her brother had just gotten hugged and even kissed by this adorable girl. Her associate stared back, completely stunned. She just walked away, leaving him to wrestle with her words, then started heading for the Grand Academy with her brother and her associate right behind her, snapping that those simple-minded students only care about stuff like this, telling him to go back and see it for himself. Her gaze snapped from her companion to the academy grounds below, landing hard on one student. Then, on November 8th, his name burned itself into her mind as she watched him from that window. She fully turned to the window and clamped her hands on the frame, knuckles going white, and the question hit her hard. Why was he here on this stage right now? She didn't have answers, but one thing was crystal clear. If he stepped in her way, she'd crush him without mercy. Her face snapped into steel, and she swore she'd fight this cursed world to the end, shoving her own will into fate itself, as if she could stitch it into the fabric of reality. One road split ahead of her, forged by a terrible curse and a determination that wouldn't quit. And when the choice finally came, she picked one thing: destruction. In a hush-hush chat between the young women, Alicia Oldwood gets totally caught off guard. Heat floods her cheeks when they start grilling her about that recent date. Jealousies pushes for answers, demanding to know what they were doing that night and confirming they really walked through the city together, while Alicia stammers, trying to shrug the whole thing off. Right there, Ragnar Brave snaps to attention. Wait, they're talking about the date, and he totally missed his shot to join in. Then he catches Alicia spilling how they'd smelled grilled skewers and decided to chase street food, a first for both of them, and Jaleesis blurts out how shocked she is, because this kind of new experience is especially new for Ragnar. He picks up right where she left off and wonders if Ragnar's been kept too sheltered, or if he's just green to the world, because until recently, the guy couldn't even ride a train. From his hiding spot, he catches every word and smirks faintly, because yeah, she's clocked him completely, and he realizes he must look utterly hopeless the moment it's not about fighting. Alicia instantly undercuts his self-confidence with her own thoughts. She looks at him and can't help thinking he's downright cute, and Ragnar's whole act derails as shock and embarrassment hit him all at once. Her friend keeps the interrogation rolling, pressing her on whether Alicia was the one doing the escort, because that's not how this usually goes. Alicia doesn't flinch. She admits she took charge, even grabbing his hand to guide him through the capital. Revelation hits Jaleesis like a lightning bolt. She remembers Ragnar's perfect date plan came down to rolling dice, a scheme so chaotic it could have turned the royal capital into a blazing sea of fire, and now she can't stop wondering what kind of person he really is. He relives their first date again. Ragnar suddenly starts pointing at rocks scorched by dragon's breath, and the clues scream that a tipsy drunk had gotten their hands all over the damage too. After hearing all those wild stories, Jaleesis turns to Alicia and asks if she wants him to grab the lead. Alicia just smiles softly and shrugs, it's fine like this. Jealousies in her conversation get cut off when Mariana spots that lunch is almost over and asks if they should head back. And while Mariana studies her with a thoughtful look, Alicia stares into the distance as her resolve turns to stone. Then she blurts out that her goal is to become Ragni's equal, and that's the real fire behind everything she's been doing. The memory of their time together hits Ragnar, and a shy blush spreads as he thanks her for their meal. Then, while she settles on a garden bench, a watcher who's hidden in plain sight comments on her charm, right away knowing exactly why Ragnar's gone and fallen for her. It all kicked off with a total disaster week of dungeon training, and a tiny crew of students charged straight into the cavern's gaping mouth. Right after that, like nothing ever happened, the students kicked off their next hands-on training session by a grand, sunlit poolside. Ragnar Brave stood at the water's edge, staring at the pool like it was an unanswered riddle. Why on earth was it even there in the academy? It was simple. This was an autumn game world where a swimsuit episode can explode out of thin air, and right across the pool, Alicia was boxed in by two insanely good-looking shirtless young men. She burst up in panic, coughing, and blurted that she couldn't swim worth a damn and the water terrified her. Then one young guy rushed to tell Patricia he was right there with her, while the other cut in fast, claiming he'd be the one who saved her. From a distance, Ragnar watched the scene play out and his face twisted with disgust. He knew this was one of those you-earned-it reward events that shows up right after a battle, but it didn't bring him an ounce of joy. Then, out of nowhere, a voice cut through the air and shouted his name. To find Mariana Ocean in a swimsuit, grilling him like, "Aren't you gonna jump in?" When he said he'd do it later, she finally bought it and let it go. They brightly suggested they grab some tea by the poolside, saying it was the perfect day for magic. Confusion flashed across her face as she stared at Ragnar and asked if it wasn't him they were calling from across the way, because the only two people who ever reached for her were Alicia and Ragnar. His gaze slid to a cluster of students trading whispers, smugly insisting that Mariana was a commoner who somehow wasn't getting roasted. Probably because she knew her station and kept her manners perfect. Mariana stood there, smiling until that cheerful glow slowly dimmed, replaced by deep, silent thought. She stands beside the pool with Ragnar, her hand resting softly on his, but her thoughts drift somewhere else, because she keeps asking out loud where Alicia could have gone. That question jolts something in Ragnar's head. Alicia's gentle face flashes back, her cheeks warming as she thanks him and tells him he worries too much. Attention snaps back to Mariana, who rushes in to steady him and tells him with fierce confidence that Alicia will be okay and can muscle through anything that comes her way. Right now, though Mariana's only goal is staying by his side as she practices her water magic, letting out a satisfied little sigh. Just as she thinks she's finally safe, wham, water rockets up from the pool and drenches her head to toe, and she yelps in shock, demanding to know what the heck is going on. A student with a high ponytail is powering up her own brutal magic, and she barely even looks up when she tells Mariana to back off from the pool for her own safety. While Ragnar glares, snarling about that wasteland bastard, and a panicked, blind Mariana scrambles frantically to find her lost glasses. He can practically hear the whispers slithering around him. When they spot the scars on his body, fear hits hard. They jerk back and start screaming rumors that he's cursed, even as they can't ignore how closer he keeps getting to Mariana. Their judgment crashes down on him, and he swears friendship feels like a lost cause. He yearns for someone he can finally connect with, then bam, a voice slices through his loneliness. Jalus's Grand Ignite pulls up beside him, reading his pain and saying it must be brutal. Then he drops into the seat beside Ragna, staring him down with zero hesitation, like the whole room goes silent just for them. That unexpected move hits Ragna like lightning, and he's left completely stunned, his mind spinning in pure disbelief. Ragna can't make sense of what's happening, and Jaleesis stays cool as ice, inviting him to sit down. The name finally snaps into place, and Ragna gapes in shock when a faint shimmer of energy dances around Jaleesis' fingertips. He suddenly stumbles into this huge, modern poolside scene, packed with other students splashing in the sun like the day is calling them out. Jalusis stands off from the crowd and locks onto him with sharp focus, realizing this is his first real talk with a capture target, and the guy is impossible to read, so Jalusis can only admit to himself, "Yeah, I've got nothing." Ragnar's grip tightens and sweat beads on his forehead as he forces himself to look at Jaleesis. Then he blurts, "Why'd you come up to me? Shouldn't I be joining everyone in the pool?" Jalesha half leans back and glances at the water, saying straight up that he's no good with it. Ragnar freezes at the sudden slip, and then Jaleesis snaps his attention back, because the real issue is this: Ragnar's got an incredible body. Ragnar soaks up the compliment, then admits his sculpted physique came from his days in the free territory, only to groan inward that he should have worn a shirt, and right after that, Jaleesis points out the wound on his back. His mind drifts straight to Alicia, and he decides this: if she isn't hiding her own wounds, then he's not about to hide his either. Jaleesis and Ragnar sit side by side on a bench, and Jaleesis can't hide his admiration. Says the free territory has been clashing with a neighboring country for ages, and that Ragnar looks built like a weapon. Ragnar just brushes it off, firing back that Jaleesis isn't slouching either because his body is just as well trained. He gives a small, tired smile and nods, like we're both carrying scars, and Jaleesis jumps in, saying his condition stems from how he was raised and what they drilled into him. Even with that bonding vibe, Ragnar's nerves go haywire. He's drenched in sweat, and as he stares into the mess, his thoughts immediately snap to his missing butler, Seabass, because the whole thing feels brutally awkward. He was still trying to process what they'd said when Jaleesis snapped his name. Ragna spun around, sweat dripping down his temple, completely thrown off as Jaleesis just stared him down, eyes locked and razor-sharp. Right during a breather from his training, shirtless Ragnar Brave gets stopped. Jaleesis Granignite steps up and drops away too personal question: has Ragnar ever held hands with someone? Ragnar just blurts out this totally confused sound. Ragnar gets thrown off the moment the abrupt question hits, flustered and reeling, because Jaleesis has totally steamrolled the conversation and shoved his own agenda forward, and Ragnar can't deny what it means. Realization hits. This is Jaleesis's emotional phase, the exact kind of shift that kicks in right after you collect all 18 flags with him. Frantically can't stop staring at himself like, why am I getting dragged into this game-like progression? He's convinced it has to be a glitch, and the proof is Jaleesis, who used to keep his distance, was supposed to suddenly become uncharacteristically interested in Alicia and pepper her with questions. So when everything veers off the expected track, it leaves him completely stunned. Jaleesis gives a straight answer for why he kept pushing. He says he just got curious about Ragnar, and when that line pops up, it screams relationship upgrade, like the game is outright hinting at the mechanics behind his theory. Nothing settles Ragnar's stormy thoughts. He sees Jaleesis creeping too close to Alicia and fears she'll make a sudden, unwanted move on him, so he clenches his fists and his whole body tenses. After deciding he'll end this for good, he charges up his special move and calls it the Brave-style rejection punch. Before he can swing, Jaleesis slices through the tension with a sharp, straight-up question: what do you like about Alicia? Weary leaves hit him, and for a second he can't even talk. He just blurts out another confused "ha." Jaleesis drops his gaze, his face unreadable, and asks what's wrong, but his voice trails off into a soft, unfinished because. He lifts his gaze and flashes that knowing, unsettling smile, then leans in close. His voice drops with chilling certainty. You're not supposed to be here yet. He and Ragnas froze in tense silence beside the indoor pool, eyes locked like neither would blink first. Jaleesis wore a calm, smug smirk while Ragnas stared back with a nervous, watch-every-move fear. That eerie quiet felt like a weight pressing down on everyone. Ragnar, barely sweating, could only stare in disbelief at how the other guy kept his cool, mumbling a soft, shaky yes. Then he laid it out flat and confirmed Ragnar's worst fear, saying Ragnar was the one who had gone deepest before, pointing straight to that past hidden battle. Ragnar snapped, demanding to know why Jaleesis came for him now, out in the open, in broad daylight, right there by the pool. And when Jaleesis sat down and spoke, he straight up called it war, swearing he'd never let Ragnar touch Elisha. His mind spun from the shock of the challenge, but just as it hit, a bright voice burst out from the water, shouting to someone named Jaleesis. A young woman paddled up to Ragnar with a bow in hand, thinking he was the other boy, and she blurted that Jaleesis can't swim at all. Then she offered to train together. Flustered, Ragnar stammered, I'm coming. Across the pool, real Jaleesis watched it all unfold. He clocked the truth. Ragnar had never kissed anyone. Then he confessed he'd lost the last round too, and with a grin, he declared the score was tied, 1 win each, 1 loss each. Right nearby, a pack of male students just finished their swims, then hauled themselves out, cracked open the relaxation mode, and ducked into the shade. The casual bickering of his peers, that chaos hit Ragnar like a shockwave. He grabbed his head as he caught one of them snapping at the other, demanding why he was still chasing that same girl. His thoughts spun into chaos. He couldn't wrap his head around why some girl from Patricia's harem was even part of this, or why she'd suddenly turned her sights on Elisha, because the rules of this world made zero sense to him. Rage flares in his eyes as he swears to summon Onyx the dragon and burn the culprits who sparked this conflict, until a sharp voice slices through his fury and orders him to stop. In the dim light, Jaleesis stands in a dark one-piece swimsuit and glares at him, demanding to know what kind of dangerous stuff he's been muttering under his breath. His thoughts explode into a vision of a monstrous beast, locked in a cage and hammering the bars, while Handler battles to hold it back, and it hits him that his own rage is barely trapped too. She asks if anyone told him to hold back, and he snaps, no, that's not it at all, because there's just someone out there he's dying to kill. Her face tightens with worry and she tells him, lately I've been hearing about too many injuries coming out of your class. She snaps that if he keeps tearing forward like this, his and his allies' position will just get worse, and right as she says it, she raises a heavy buckle collar. He snatches the collar without a second thought, and while she's flustered and stammering that he really doesn't have to wear it, especially with people watching, he stays cool and calmly declares he'll put it on today. Collar snapped tight at his throat, he declares to Jaleesis, Elisha isn't mine, I'm all in. Jaleesis turns his back and tells some unseen crew that this attitude right here is what keeps Ragnar standing apart from them. Just as his thoughts kick into gear, Mariana rockets over, frantic about her glasses, only to not notice they're sitting right on her head, while Ragnar stares at her and the thought in his mind fades out. From afar, Jaleesis watched with a tight, uneasy focus, his confident notes, but his gut telling him the enemy just made their move by snatching a sacred relic, and he can't stop wondering, does this mean their real nature has finally been exposed? Ragnar stands there alone, and he finally snaps that thick leather collar tight around his neck, and the moment he feels it, a warm little pulse creeps across his cheeks, leaving him lost in thought as he touches it again. Elsewhere under the blazing sun over that massive estate, Jaleesis, confident, tightens his silent vow again, because he's going to shield them both no matter what, lurking in the shadows or standing in the light, and he won't let his guard slip for a second. On a sunny day at the academy, Elisha Oldwood squints into the glare and jokes about how summer clothes feel like a gift. Then Mariana Ocean slides up and asks what she's doing, and Elisha admits she's hunting for Ragnar, but he's nowhere to be seen during lunch break. A faint blush flares across Alicia's face as she admits, under her breath, that she'd been craving lunch with him. Ragnar sits alone, spiraling into his thoughts, while 2 other students nearby chatter about summer break, one dropping hints she'd love to hit the road with the man she likes, maybe even steal a kiss. And when Ragnar overhears it, he grips his hands tight, realizing he's about to deal with something way more serious than he expected. Mariana cuts through his focus and blurts, "Were you really lost in your thoughts?" Then she spots the terrifying, evil magic spilling off him and warns him that Alicia has been searching for him. Ragna panics and blurts out an apology, swearing it was nothing important. He insists he's just running a little magic detection for Alicia's class, but inside, it's tearing him apart because he can't stop thinking about what terrible thing he's done. Then he whips around to Mariana and fires off a sharp question. Come on, during summer, don't boys and girls naturally want to get closer, maybe even kiss? And it leaves Mariana completely rattled and flustered. She darts her eyes away, cheeks blazing as she stammers, telling him he can't ask her stuff like that, because for her, it's still not the right time. After getting her bearings, she clocks the real issue instantly. She clears her throat and says she understands. The truth, he's terrified Alicia could get snatched by someone else. It means he pushes forward with real purpose, staring at the question like it's burning. Who in their right mind would chase a woman who's already engaged and sharing a home with her fiancé? He blurts it out, wondering who'd even try, and his mind instantly paints a scary picture of a sinister-looking man. He rushes to clarify it's just a background check, nothing more than a simple precaution. Yet Mariana glares right past him and snaps that she's going to tell Alicia anyway, and the moment it hits, panic detonates in Ragna as he begs her to wait. Mariana stood him there in silence while she grilled him. If he was really that worried about Alicia, why not stay by her nonstop and ask yourself why you vanish every time so fast? He said it wouldn't feel right to steal her time from everyone else, and he also feared that if he stayed by her side every day, people would start blaming her for him. Ragna looked totally stunned by his logic, blurting that she wouldn't give a damn about that kind of criticism, and Alicia wouldn't either. Then it hit her why he'd been dodging her, and she realized it wasn't about her at all. Ragna quietly admitted in a low voice that he did care. His quiet declaration got snatched away the second a familiar voice rang out. Alicia slid in, called his name, and totally jolted him. She flashed a bright smile like none of it mattered, brushed off the awkward tension, and practically pulled him into the plan. After school, they were heading to the library to team up with everyone and knock out that summer vacation assignment together. Mariana watched it all unfold and snapped that it was pure torture to stand on the outside and wait, then caught Ragnas hesitating and pitched a fix. She knew a calm, secluded spot where they could study in peace. Ragna caught himself overthinking and always trying to be considerate, wondering if Alicia had noticed, because she always looked lonely, yet she never once said a word. Mariana blurted her thoughts out loud, wondering if caring only meant they'd keep their distance, then wouldn't it be smarter to stay together all the time? Her blunt honesty made Alicia and Ragna squirm, and Alicia groaned that the whole talk was giving her heartburn. With the plan locked in, Mariana blew them a goodbye, swearing she'd catch up with them after school, and Ragnar decided right then to corner Alicia and lay everything out privately. Plus, he couldn't deny it, Mariana was pushy in a way that totally fit a former protagonist. He caught up with Alicia later, scrambling to apologize for the delay, only for her to laugh and say she'd just arrived too. Before they could even settle in, Mariana burst between them with a shocking pop, yanked them along, and guided them straight to their seats. She kicked off the study session by staring straight at Ragna, thanking him for worrying about her, and bluntly saying his feelings were already crystal clear. She broke it down, calling out the mismatch, how on his days off he's all over Alishan, even dragging her on dates, yet at school he keeps his distance like she's a stranger. Flustered, Mariana confessed she'd panicked, that's why she lunged in so hard. Then Alicia snapped a razor-sharp look and cut her off, saying plainly it wasn't her problem and they'd deal with everything on their own pace. Alicia's sharp retort cut through her composure and a hot blush surged across her face. Then she snapped, Ragnar, hurry up, sit next to me. Right then, Seabass and a maid stormed in with a mountain of homework, and the butler grinned as he announced they'd bulldoze through it fast so Ragnar wouldn't have to drag it back to his domain. Ragnar spun toward Mariana and told her they were short on people, so she might have to jump in sometimes, and even though she looked rattled, she finally asked if it was really okay for her to come with them. Ragnar answered without hesitation and said yes. With the argument finally over, all three of them dove back into the work, huddled around the table with their books open, while Alicia pumped them up and boldly pushed for magic training to be part of the session too. Alicia Oldwood leans in and quizzes Ragnar Brave about what souvenir he's hunting for, and there, beside the steaming coffee and a bag of beans, he shrugs. He's probably just going to come home with coffee beans. He lays out his reason. He just wants everyone back home to taste that insanely amazing coffee he had at Mariana's place, and the moment Mariana hears it, her face lights up as she practically gushes. I'll bring the beans myself. She swears she's got a massive stash at home and insists they all take some. With a shy blush, she admits she got carried away even before school started. She was convinced she'd fail the entrance exam, so she went and bought an insane mountain of beans. Now she's freaking out because there's no way she can finish them all, not just on weekends. Right then, Alicia jumps at her chance and agrees to go along with the offer. Mariana claps her hands together in pure relief, and Ragna quietly nods too, backing the decision. Then he whips around to Mariana and fires off a request. Would she teach the whole Brave family her coffee-making techniques so everyone can share in the experience together? Mariana grins warmly and agrees right away, then she shrugs and says she's not good enough to teach, even as she promises she'll give it everything. Ragna, meanwhile, can't stop praising her. That coffee's flavor is unreal, and since she's Alicia's best friend, she's bound to be welcomed with open arms by his household staff. He tells her he's just grabbing some materials and asks if she needs anything, and Mariana smiles back, thanking him and saying she's completely fine. He strides through the massive library with his hands shoved in his pockets, then halts dead still the second he spots the exact shelf he came for sage studies. He stands there as a familiar voice floats in from the nearby corridor, and when he turns, he freezes. Alicia's laughing while a young man kneels in front of her, shouting that it tickles. Ragna's Prime Minister's son, young Castor von Pentagram, grips her hand as he watches the chaos unfold, locks eyes with Alicia in her Patricia disguise, and can't help but stare at her with a soft, aching warmth, thinking love always hits like this. She just stared, totally frozen, as Castor yanked Alicia into a hug and blurted that her name was Patricia, then swore by his holy mother. After that, he begged her to pat him gently, and she actually did, praising him as a good boy while gushing that his behind-the-scenes work was downright admirable. The whole bizarre sight hit him like a wrecking ball. His brain screamed the same disbelief over and over. A mama's boy, and it just couldn't be. That move shattered everything Castor thought he knew. This guy was supposed to be sharp, steady, and responsible, not doing anything like this because the game had nothing for him. The truth hit like a punch, and it left him rattled. He tried to wrap his mind around it, and then, boom, an old memory hit him. Alicia talking to Prince Edward, worry all over her face, asking what happened and whether he'd truly moved on. Then the present hit like a thunderclap. Castor's voice sliced through the memories as he begged, "Patricia, please wait for me." He laid out his whole scheme and swore that in the next student council election, he'd get himself on the council just so he could nominate her. Alicia pretended to doubt herself, asking if someone like a commoner could even pull it off. Then she stroked her hair as Castor stepped in, voice steady, and told her with full confidence that he knew her talent better than anyone. That confidence didn't come out of nowhere, it was forged by their past. A memory flashed back to their first meeting at a trading company where he admitted she'd been haunting his thoughts ever since, and he never once expected their paths would collide again at school. This whole history ignited the rivalry. Then, in another memory, Prince Edward showed up and declared Alicia was meant for him, only for Castor to fire back that he'd met her first, and that's exactly why he demanded she pick him. Back in the present, Alicia fired her reply, leaning in and kissing Castor's cheek as she whispered that she hadn't even done that with Edward. Then her eyes turned soft but steady as she pressed, "Do you get it now?" Her gesture hits Castor like a wave of relief. He shuts his eyes, whispers his gratitude, and finally lets himself believe he'll get a real, sound sleep. As he savors the moment, Ragna slips out of his hiding spot, just a quiet click from the door and he's gone without anyone noticing. He crumples onto the nearest staircase and lets out a heavy sigh because the truth hits him hard. Alicia might have been planting her connection to Castor since childhood. "So that's the plan," he mutters, and a bead of sweat slips down his temple. His spiraling troubles get cut off by a calm voice, and then a young woman with a huge bow in her hair pops up beside him, dragging him for his awful manners just for staring at someone's kiss. With a sharp, knowing smile, she says those mischief threads of hers are so perfectly spun they practically write themselves. In a huge library, Ragna strides up to Alicia, jaw clenched, and snaps at her for her manners, because in his mind, she forced a kiss on him. Then his voice drops through the tension as he demands, with her full name, Patricia Kindred, whether she ditched the prince just to switch sides and throw everything to him. She winks, presses a finger to her lip, and teases him like, what a kiss is really that weird. Then she slaps the label on him, calling him a virgin boy, and right as dark, murderous rage sparks in Ragna's head, she waves off his anger and challenges him. Does he really think her mission is to build a harem? She whips her hair around in a dramatic sweep, declares she's just here to conquer the world, and coolly tells him, Don't you dare get in her way. He snaps back, grilling her on what conquering even means, and calls her out for throwing the whole narrative into chaos. Then she smirks, turns away, and lets him have it. That line is literally his. Then she slams out an enormous, gold-detailed necklace, cradling a dark, glittering gemstone. One flash of light and Ragna's eyes blow wide as he realizes it's a sacred treasure. They square up face to face and she keeps her voice steady as she reveals the truth. She got the treasure as payback for all the trouble he dragged into her life. He shoves the pressure onto her, demanding to know what she's planning, and she dodges, insisting she's nothing but a weak commoner. Then she snaps her gaze to his face and asks, dead serious, if people always tell him he's got a terrible personality. She doesn't wait for an answer. She whips around and strides down the long, book-lined hallway, tossing off that same casual line she always gets, and Ragna just stands there, watching her fade away in stunned silence. Later, Ragna and Alicia sit down at a table with two others, and a glasses-wearing young woman snaps, "You're late, Ragna." At the same time, a young man with an undercut smirks and jokes that it's crazy hot for a couple to be kissing right in front of the bookshelves. Then Alicia's cheeks ignite with a furious blush. The woman with glasses whips her head straight to Alicia and shoots, point blank, if she's ever kissed anyone before, and Alicia freezes, speechless, her face flushing scarlet while Ragna watches from behind. She flashes back to her engagement with Edward, thinking a kiss or two would have been totally normal between them. Her whole train of thought shatters when Ragna suddenly stumbles, grabbing his chest as pain hits hard, so the girl with glasses bolts over and demands to know if he's okay. He swears it's nothing fatal, just a lingering ache from his fight with that black dragon. Still on one knee, he can't stop thinking that Alicia probably has zero experience with a kiss, and that she's not the same person he used to know anymore. She's changed, big time. Then Alicia clocks his weird look and asks what he's picturing, even though she has no idea. Ragna slowly pushes up to his feet, and when Alicia snaps that she hasn't done anything like that, he stares down with a tangled look before quietly asking, "So, not yet?" Right when their tension snaps, jealousy barges in and the girl with glasses, Mariana, instantly panics. Jealousy turns to Alicia coolly and goes, "So you're here, we haven't seen each other since the pool." She asked why they'd ended up here, and Ragna, standing right beside her, said they'd only come to deliver a stack of printouts. Jealousy flares as Alicia thinks, maybe I should hop into their study session, but Alicia shoots back fast, because that's her seat. She fires off one more warning. It's a terrible idea since the young girl next to her can't even focus on her work. With a smirk, she snaps that Jealousy should go home. Then Jealousy grins back, fires off a cruel line, and thrusts a folded paper at her. "I'll just give you this," Jealousy says, and then shoves it firmly into Alicia's hand. But instead of letting go, Jealousy snaps Alicia's hand into hers and brings it to her lips, kissing the back of it. That wild, unexpected move knocks the wind out of Alicia and Ragna both, leaving them stunned and completely speechless. Her stunned look lights a fuse. Jealousy snaps, "Is this really your first time feeling this?" Ragna's face turns to steel as he barrels forward and barks, "So you're trying to start something with me, Alicia's fiancé?" Jealousy doesn't blink, firing back, "Do you mean a fight like the one in the library?" Inside, she thinks since people are watching, it's fine asterisk, and she can't help but clock just how shameless he is. Just when the tension keeps ratcheting higher and higher, Alicia, shaking with overload, suddenly lunges forward and clamps onto Ragna's back, screaming his name. She leans in and tries to soothe him, saying, "A hand kiss is just how nobles greet each other, don't freak out." Her closeness throws him off, and Ragna's fury melts away as he asks, grinning, if she's calm now, calling her a good girl. Jealousy watches and scoffs at it all, muttering that Ragna's nothing but a brute, then turns to lead. As she strides away, Jealousy snaps her back and tells her to turn around, because all she can think about is Clive, who begged her to enjoy their summer vacation together and swore it would be amazing. And now the scene of a train gliding across a bridge over a lush valley keeps flashing in her head like a promise of the journey ahead. Mariana leans out of the train car, eyes wide as the world streaks past, and gives the scenery a proud salute like it's a grand hero entrance. She blurts that it's absolutely magnificent, and that this is her first time ever leaving the capital by train, while a sharp little premonition of adventure sparks in her chest. Sitting across from Ragna and Alicia, Alicia says she thought they'd be riding by horse, but Mariana shakes her head, insisting that even if they stop and deuse the train sometimes, their destination never changes. You don't just jump off whenever you feel like it. Ragnar says he'll handle the supplies alone, and Alicia grins like Christmas is here. She can't wait to meet the mansion's residents. Right nearby, a tiny winged creature gasps in shock, stunned they're leaving this fast after just arriving because it fully expected them to stay way longer. He whips his eyes to the window and watches the world blur past, then pauses, eyes clouding with thought, shocked to realize he's aching for home. Right then, he slams his coffee cup down and says he's heading to the restroom. Alicia side-eyes him for chugging way too much, while Mariana just snaps, "Hurry back." The train's heavy iron wheels clattered in a steady, thunderous rhythm, hauling every passenger forward down the tracks. He strides through the cramped corridor between the train cars, wearing a calm, unreadable face like a mask. As he pushes forward, three looming men suddenly block his way, one thick-set brute from earlier standing right in the middle. Then they smirk and greet him with a taunting, "Welcome, Lord." They swarm in fast, and one of the men grins that Ragnar helped them slip onto the train unseen, like he's nothing more than a harmless tag-along for his fiancée. A hulking brute slams into a nasty laugh and snaps, wondering if Ragnar's really tied to the Ignite family or if he's some spy from a rival nation's intel team. Then he cuts him down as just a kid and roars at his men, "Don't underestimate him and kill him." In a blink, Ragnar rockets into action, unleashing a brutal combo and yelling his technique names as he rockets in with a karate punch, roars out a thunder requiem and slams down an eternal blizzard, mowing all three assailants flat in one unstoppable assault. He drags out a tired sigh as the train keeps grinding forward, chug-chugging along the tracks that slice straight through a brutal rocky canyon. Inside the now secured car, he perches on a mountain of his defeated attackers, calling it his throne as unconscious bodies slump at his feet, and he can't stop pacing in his head, waiting for them to finally roll up to that brave territory. He brushes off the attackers like they're nothing but little fry, remembering Patricia's words about submission, then shrugs it off as pointless because the only thing that matters is staying close to the two of them. Right then, his mind flips to the real problem. The general car is packed, so he decides he's got to hunt down a seat. He slams the brakes, totally forgetting the search for a seat, and then his eyes snap to the group nearby: Clive, another young guy, and Alicia. And then Clive whips his head around like he sensed something, and when Ragnar finally sees what's there, it hits him hard. Alicia is sprawled asleep, her head snug on the other young man's shoulder. Ragnar stares down in stunned silence, completely blown away. On the train platform, Clive lunges at Ragnar, yells that he's Alicia's former fiancé, and demands why the hell Ragnar is here. Then Ragnar barely starts to speak when Alicia cuts in, slips between them, and introduces the dark-haired young man as Ragnar Volfrev. She whirls back to Ragnar, her cheeks just barely pink, and tells him she knows he's packed with questions, then snaps, "Sit down for now." Inside the train carriage, Clive studies the empty seats, brow knitted with thought, and mutters that he never expected to ride alone this late. Then he's quick to decide it can only be Alicia pulling the strings. He keeps going, stunned that he's actually ended up riding in a general carriage, and with a smug grin he says his little prank has blown way bigger than he ever planned. Then he leans in toward Ragnar like he's about to whisper a secret, but an invisible barrier snaps the sound right out of the air before it can reach Ragnar's ear. Clive yanks back his move, then flips the whole plan, telling them he's got an appointment to meet Patricia at the terminal station and he's requested her as his escort. He even sneers at Ragnar and Alicia like they're just commoners, and Ragnar's face instantly turns cold. Ragnar's eyes snap to Mariana, peacefully sprawled in Alicia's lap, and his mind immediately spirals to Patricia, remembering how she got tangled up with Edward at the exact same time. As he wrestles with it, Mariana suddenly starts muttering in her sleep, and a deep worry creases her face. Alicia softly cradles the sleeping girl, assuring Ragnar everything's fine and urging her to keep resting. Ragnar watches, jaw tight in envy, thinking he should be the one there, still barely awake. Mariana mutters, "The prince is here," and her voice wavers as she feels herself going faint. Right then, the compartment door slides open and Clive leans in like he owns the place, asking casually if Mariana's woken up. She jerks awake, eyes snapping wide, and the gasp hits as she realizes he's real, not some dream. Alicia snaps into action and throws herself between the frightened girl and his gaze, and Clive watches, furious that she's doing exactly what he told her not to, no touching, because it could slam the girl's trauma right back into her. She answers cool as ice that this is just a regular carriage, not some royal hangout where nobility should drop by, and Clive lets out a tired sigh, slaps a hand to his forehead, and grumbles in pure exasperation about her saying the same thing again. He relives that old incident, the one where Alicia stood in armor, visibly shaken, and he swears he thought the Republic's awareness had changed because of it, but now a darker, stranger possibility crawls into his mind. That doubt hardens fast into a sneer. He leans over Alicia as she soothes Mariana, then spits out a condescending jab. Did her parents really teach her to hang around a commoner just to patch up her own image? Before Alicia can even answer, Ragnar lunges forward and snaps his voice out, shouting to grab Clive's attention. Then he whips around to Alicia and motions her to stay calm, while Clive watches the whole thing with irritation flaring in his eyes. Ragnar steps up to Clive face to face and snaps that sure, he can't just play hero inside the academy's halls. But this isn't school grounds, and out here he's got every right to call out the injustice. Clive snaps it down, brushes past the point, and steers the conversation to Alicia's old leftovers. Then he asks if they're still latched onto Patricia, a name that instantly makes Alicia freeze and wonder what he's really talking about. He presses on, hinting at a nasty rumor she supposedly left in her wake. Yeah, he admits he's got no real proof, but that insinuation sits in the air like a weight. Alicia whips her gaze away, swallowed by her own thoughts. Then she can't stop asking why Clive would meddle from the shadows just to torment Mariana. While she thinks it through, Ragnar's hand snaps into a fist, and the word royalty slams into his head, drenched in that dark urge to kill. Clive snaps into action, then suddenly lunges forward and yanks Mariana away from Alicia with brutal force, sneering that even after their broken engagement, her commoner attitude hasn't changed. The violent move leaves everyone reeling. He stood there stunned, still clamped onto the young woman, but she didn't crumble. She fought back with pure defiance. Through her glasses, her eyes burned with outrage as she snapped that he had no right to talk like he knew anything, calling out his ignorance and insisting he didn't understand a thing. Her words hung there trembling while his grip clamped down harder. With a dismissive, almost soft voice, Clive insisted he was doing it only for her, but Mariana snapped back instantly, screaming that she'd never asked for any of it. Mariana's mind sprinted in circles as she replayed what the teacher said about the incident, realizing, if she'd been in Alicia's shoes, she'd have to rush back to the academy immediately, because the images of the people who were taken and everything stolen from them clung to her like a crushing weight. Her panic kept swelling as she watched how Alicia refused to break even after such brutal treatment. Alicia never let it stain her expression. She just kept locking eyes with Mariana and flashing a soft, steady smile. The memory snapped to a new scene. Clive stood there, facing the small girl as he pressed her with questions, demanding she explain how she could pull off something like that just because her parents told her to. In the present day, Alicia cradled Mariana's hands and soothed her, whispering that everything would be okay. And then Alicia apologized for pushing her to speak so much, her voice trembling with worry while Mariana's face sank deeper into heartbreak. She kept going, saying that even a prince would snap if someone hurt their friends, and Mariana swore Alicia was strong and that she admired her with her whole heart. Alicia froze, shook her head, and insisted she wasn't strong at all, because Ragnar's memory and a surge of jealousy hit her like lightning. Her denial fizzled as her finger met the cipher's face, and then it hit her like lightning. A burned scar, she whispered, staring wide as the Grand Academy building snapped back into her memory. The memory hit her like a wave. She and Mariana sat on a bench in mismatched uniforms, sharing food, and Mariana leaned in, ready to help, asking if she should use her healing magic on the injury. Back then, she straight up refused the offer, then met the person's eyes with a calm, unshakable look, saying the scar wasn't a weakness, it was the proof she'd fought. And she planned to keep it, grab strength from it, and charge forward. In the present embrace again, Mariana's eyes overflowed with tears. She swore she'd take Alicia's old wound into herself, and only then would it finally heal. Overwhelmed with emotion, Alicia choked out her thanks, and from across the distance, Clive just watched their embrace in silence. Then he finally spoke one word, "Your Highness." He blurts out an apology for barging in, but Alicia doesn't even face him, her back still to him, as she calmly says that if her companion was disrespectful, she'll own it all. Ragnar blurts out a quick correction, stammering that it's nothing like that, but Alicia turns toward him with a steady gaze, and Ragnar can't help watching the tense back and forth with a prick of anxiety. Ragnar clenched his thoughts and realized pushing the situation would only twist everything into something worse. Then his mind snapped back to the day Alicia lay gravely injured, her wounds blazing with the truth of Edward's death, standing beside her outside that house like a quiet, brutal witness to what had happened. And still, despite everything, she's taken every blow and kept moving. Now she's living it wide open because she's his fiancée. Inside the train, the crew finally settles in. Then Ragnar turns to Clive and growls that he should be grateful Clive is even allowed on the same carriage. Alicia snaps back gently about Ragnar's disrespect, but Ragnar won't back down and keeps pressing the issue. A dark-haired, spiky kid butts in, slaps Clive on the shoulder with a grin, and pushes them toward another car right as Ragnar turns and checks with a fresh face, confirming Alicia is his fiancée. The newcomer nods, and when Alicia overhears it, she can't help thinking about how much she's changed since joining the Brave faction. Right before he leaves, Clive whips around to Ragnar and swears a solemn vow. Starting now, he'll be the one who protects Alicia. Ragnar only grins, saying she's a good, strong woman, and that fat Clive, he nods too, accepting it with steady, quiet resolve. As the spiky-haired young man strides down the corridor, he lets out a heavy sigh and whispers to himself that if it's Ragnar, he might just pull it off. Mariana slams his departure to a stop and admits things have been rough. Then she points out Clive's stuck in a spot where he can't just apologize, so she offers it for him while Alicia watches, stunned. He swats her apology away with a lazy wave, telling her he's used to this kind of mess, and as the train rattles through the mountains, he lets out a wry grin, like chaos has never once left this place. Inside the train car, Mariana snaps at Ragna and Alicia, puffing her cheeks with furious indignation. She demands to know why they won't apologize, then fires off that the prince deserves to be punished for choosing Alicia as his betrothed. She clenches her fists and insists it still isn't right, but Ragna steps in with a calm snap, forcing a royal to bow might count as punishable treason, and it leaves Mariana staring, stunned. While the tension snaps in the air, a shadowy stranger in a long, pale cloak and a wide-brim hat slips down the aisle without a sound. No words, no thoughts spoken, like they refuse to let anyone force an apology out of them. Back in their seats, Alicia slips in close, brushing Mariana's hair as the tears start to fall, murmuring that she's kind, and that's not something anyone can take away. The stormy tension fades fast, and Mariana grins as she starts happily munching her snack. Then Alicia calls out to Ragna. He doesn't fully turn, but with calm, unshakable resolve, he tells her he'll be the one to protect her, and those words hit Alicia hard as she stares down. She looks up at him, a deep blush flooding her cheeks as she blurts out thanks, and it totally catches Ragna off guard. Mariana, right in the back, flashes a triumphant thumbs up, trying to shove past the moment, while Ragna just says they should drop it and enjoy their lunch. On a lush green hill, staring down a sprawling expanse, Alicia, Ragna, and Mariana come to a stop. Mariana inhales like she's bracing for something good, amazed at how fresh and clean the air feels in this brave land. She breaks it down, saying the air in the capital never moves, stuck under that protective barrier. And then, right here, you can see it for yourself. The air is clear, crisp, and alive. Alicia nods without a second thought, savoring the soft wind whipping through her hair, pure joy, with no barrier in the way. Then Ragna jabs a finger toward a nearby estate and tells her, "We're about to pull up." Right as he speaks, a whole herd of household staff comes charging down the hill from the estate, roaring with shouts of welcome. Then Ragna, calm as ever, breaks into a warm smile and spreads his arms to catch their wild, boisterous greeting. The staff's focus snaps straight to Alicia as they shout her name, begging her to finally come back after all this time, and when she's visibly shaken by their loyalty, her face melts with relief as she whispers, "I'm home." Right in the middle of the warm welcome, an old butler with a monocle strides up to Ragna and salutes him like royalty. "Young master." Ragna gives him a nod and answers, "I'm back, Seabes." Alicia and Mariana watch the whole formal moment unfold with a flicker of surprise. Seabes snaps his greeting closed, spins toward the girls, and says he's already heard about Ragnus with 2 friends. The word hits Mariana like a punch. She freezes solid and stammers a frantic denial. Before Mariana can even object, Alicia slips an arm around her shoulders and beams at the staff, declaring, loud and proud, that Mariana is her best friend. Her friend's sudden, confident shout has Mariana's cheeks burning and her mouth going dry. Then she snaps out of it, introduces herself to everyone as Mariana, Alicia's best friend, and begs with a shy smile for them to take care of her. The staff greets them with open kindness. One man hurriedly apologizes for any rudeness, while a maid volunteers to lead Mariana straight to her room. As everyone files out, Seabes turns to Ragnar and says how thrilled he is to see him fully enjoying school life, and Ragnar simply nods in reply. While Seabes and he lingered in the background, Alicia spun toward Mariana, cheeks warming with a blush, and admitted it was all because of her that she started smiling so much more. While they walked, Seabes leaned in and quietly asked Ragnar if his sister had found any female friends yet. but Ragnar shot him a quick look, frowned, and snapped that the butler better not ask. He kept going, mulling that his idea of real male friendship was a scorching bond built through fists, then blurted out, "So what about girl friendships, are they different?" and straight up admitted he'd never had one. As Sebas closed in on the grand estate, he poured himself a cup of coffee and confessed he was praying the young lady would make friends. Then he leaned in and told Ragna to trust in things and stop waiting with impatient hands. Inside, a few staff members were finally off duty, and a light-haired maid blurted that she'd never tasted coffee this rich and flavorful in her life, while a dark-haired maid nodded hard, saying it was nothing like what they usually got. The big man then praised the capital's beans to the skies, and Ragna stood in the doorway, watching it all unfold. He told Sebas that the staff's reaction was nothing like his, and Sebas swore the coffee Ragnar was used to was a special blend. Then Ragnar roared at the staff, demanding why they'd been serving the territory's coffee to jolt their sleepy brains awake. The servants jumped, but Ragnar grinned because he knew it was just a joke. Later, Mariana dragged Alicia out to the fields, telling her she'd heard Alicia had pioneered something out there, and she couldn't wait to see it with her own eyes. When the maid offered to guide them, every servant jumped in, yeah, even the big guy and the bald one. They all stormed out together, and all that was left behind was a shocked sea bass and a silent Ragna. Out in the sun-blasted field, Alicia spun toward Mariana with a proud grin, pointed at the carefully tended land and told her, "We all worked together to make this." She pushed out a handful of deep, dark soil and declared, "This is our next mission, make it better." Then she leaned toward her friend with bright hope and asked, "Can you have Mariana use her earth attribute magic to fix it?" Nearby servants stared, stunned with awe. With shining eyes, Alicia heard Mariana lay it out. If they could use that grassland she'd spotted, this place could turn into a massive production hub. And Alicia's brain sprinted through the wild possibilities. A whole new vegetable-growing industry for the Volfrave domain. Meanwhile, Ragna and Clive strolled past nearby in the hallway, happily chatting away, totally unaware of what was brewing behind those walls.